Вітаємо вас на заході Science City Ecosystem Connecting Business and Science, присвяченому громадському обговоренню законопроекту, спрямованого на стимулювання розвитку наукових парків і створення ефективної екосистеми інновацій. Перш ніж перейти до вітальної частини, ми висловлюємо подяку тим, хто стоїть на захисті нашої свободи, гідності та незалежності, нашим мужнім воїнам, Збройним силам України за їхню непохитну силу. Прошу вшанувати хвилиною мовчання пам'ять тих, хто віддав своє життя за нашу країну. Нехай ця хвилина буде свідченням нашої єдності, нашої вдячності і нашої віри у те, що Україна обов'язково переможе. Захисницям України. Слава Україні! Проєкт Science City розробляється в рамках імплементації нової стратегії цифрового розвитку інновацій України Міністерством освіти і науки України спільно з Міністерством цифрової трансформації України за підтримки партнерів, яким висловлюємо подяку. USAID Україна. Подяка уряду США в особі директорки місії USAID в Україні Джулі Конен. UK Dev – подяка уряду Сполученого Королівства Великої Британії в особі директора з програм розвитку Посольства Великої Британії в Україні Стефану Косову. Проєкт «Підтримка цифрової трансформації». Подяка Фонду Євразії в особі керівника проєкту «Підтримка цифрової трансформації» Данила Молчанова та команди професіоналів, частина яких сьогодні присутня на заході. Офіс ефективного регулювання BRDO – подяки імплементуючому партнеру BRDO в особі виконавчого директора Офісу ефективного регулювання Олексія Дорганя та великої команди, що протягом року плідно співпрацювали з МОН над опрацюванням концепції, проведенням дослідження ринку та, звісно, підготовкою сьогоднішнього заходу. Окрема подяка усім учасникам, що долучились до нас. Першим до нас звернеться Михайло Федоров, віце-прем'єр-міністр України з інновацій, розвитку освіти, науки та технологій, міністр цифрової трансформації України. Звернення буде у форматі відеозапису.
Всіх учасників заходу. Інновації – основа економічного зростання та конкурентоспроможності країни. Україна вже демонструє, що здатна бути інноваційною.
Or a vision of how to make the Science City project even more effective. Or a vision of how to make the Science City project even more effective. Please join us. Your opinion is important for the formation of an innovative country. We wish you an interesting event, productive discussions, and important decisions. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you, Mikhailo, for your words of support and for the urge to join the public discussion. The next introduction speech will be done by Oksana Lysova, Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine. Please, the floor is yours. Esteemed friends, I welcome you at this event. I am so grateful that you were able to join us today at this event. This is one of the events which in fact is created to drive attention to the initiative which we, together with our partners, together with some of the activists and academic activists, the representatives of higher education, MPs, vice prime ministers, deputy prime ministers, we've initiated that together for the development of academic sphere in Ukraine. It is one of the steps, as I've mentioned. I don't mean the today's event only, but the initiative of the law draft of Science City, which is created to achieve the objective for the sake of which we are paying the price which we described in the beginning of this event, for the sake of what we are fighting, our independence, standing for our country, so that it could be well-developed, innovative, so that it wouldn't be just a raw material appendix, so that it could have equal future with the most developed countries of the world. It would be impossible without the well-developed scientific and academic sphere. Undoubtedly, we all understand that, and the actions which are created for the reforming of this branch of this sphere should really achieve the objectives of innovative development. We have two key issues today, and I would like to focus your attention on them. The first one is people. In fact, both issues concern resources. The first is people. The loss of human capital. Moreover, the human capital which is the most productive from the perspective of scientific research. Both experienced academics, which because of the war had to leave the country and don't have the opportunity, or maybe even staying in the country, they lose the opportunity to deal with scientific research. We know powerful scientific searchers and cities like Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhia cities, Odessa. They are now suffering because of terrorist attacks, and undoubtedly science activities is harder and harder to conduct there. But also the outflow of human capital, of the brain drain, which is well known. It's also the issue about the experienced scientifics and academic youth, potentially academic youth, which would be potentially capable, cool young people who unfortunately are cut out of our academic environment and are integrated into the European or American world community. That is a huge risk, and without shaping the environment which would look attractive for this youth, for these people, we are risking to lose this resource, which is the most valuable human resource, forever. We cannot afford that. The second issue which we face is undoubtedly the resource issue as well, that is finance. Funding. We know that approximately 0.9% of GDP is needed so that the science would be developing in Ukraine, so that it at least had the opportunity for the full-scale activity. If the percentage of funding is going down to 0.3%, it already plays a kind of decorative function, a kind of social, cultural function only. And it is not what we'd like to have in science. It's not what can lead us to the development of us as a country, an innovative country with powerful economy and a full-fledged player at the map of the world science. Today in 2022, by the way, we had 0.33%, even if we consider all of the special funds. If I'm not mistaken, I am considering special funds. 0.33% of GDP were invested into science. As of today, in 2024, we have 0.17%, which is critically not enough. And we are approaching to the bottom, honestly speaking. We need to create conditions so that we should bounce back from the bottom and should develop to compensate whatever we've lost already. We know that the world experience is showing the most development academic innovative countries like Israel, which has 5+% of GDP spent, Korea 4.7% of GDP, the United States of America 3.6, if I'm not mistaken, percent of GDP are invested into science. And of course, it's not only from budget. Those are the money of the investors, the businesses, which are investing into scientific researchers. And we can say the same about European countries, a very high percentage of GDP as well, and the economy, of course, which is interconnected. So, looking at the initiatives which we conduct for the development of science, among which we can see the tool which we're introducing today, a kind of an external tool for the efficiency assessment of academic activity, which is well known as the new methodology of certification and assessment, which is important, in fact, which will lead to the growth of Ukrainian science. I would like to remark here, about several months ago, we had an opportunity, together with the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, to have a dialogue about the development of science. We visited Sumy city, one of the universities, and we were discussing the amount of funding of science. We were discussing that it needs to be increased, and his position was definite. Definitely it should be increased, at least doubled. We need to find the opportunities to increase funding, at least doubling the funding. On the other hand, we understand that we need to invest into the most efficient, the most productive, the forces which give us the best outcome. So this is the methodology which I mentioned above. It is created to have the outcome this year, to invest the scarce money which we have, about 1/4 billion hryvnia, for the increase of funding in science. So we will definitely fund the institutions which will get the highest outcomes during the assessment, and we'll go on with that. Expanding the investments into science, we will use this tool of assessment according to the new methodology to understand who needs investments and who should be the focus of the resources, both internal budget, material resources, as well as the resources of the institutions themselves, weaker institutions maybe, which would need some incentive or impulse for development or better management. But it was just a remark about a different project. Today we are speaking about Science City. Today we are speaking about the acting technical parks, which are working not that bad, in fact, but as Mikhailo Fedorov said, there are only 5 of them working well. So our task, studying the experience, and we've studied it already, we need to deregulate this sphere in the way so that something could be regulated or deregulated in the way so that our technoparks, all of the acting parks, would work to the full extent. If they are not working, something is wrong with them. And the scientific institutions, together with the businesses, could create new communities or environments for the development of researchers, applied researchers first and foremost. So I urge you to active discussions. We still have 10 days of public discussion, so I hope that we will use these 10 days as much as possible with the use, so that our law draft could be perfect, so that we could take into account all of the aspects. We have the opportunity, you have the opportunity today, the academic community, to make a very nice, to accomplish very nice job, which will help investments into businesses. We have the situation, the current situation, that the war led to colossal investments into technological developments. Billions, dozens, or even hundreds of billions are invested into defense technologies, and the need of these technologies is increasing. I would really like to see the situation when some of these billions could be invested into Ukrainian universities and academic institutions. I would like the Ukrainian universities to be compliant with the request of the businesses and defense sphere, but not only defense sphere, because we have lots of issues in many spheres, and solution of these spheres very often is in the technological part, the technological component. I would like to express my gratitude to our partners who are supporting our activity. First and foremost, our international partners, British Council, USAID, several foundations and partners which are cooperating with us. I would like to thank Deputy Prime Minister Mikhailo Fedorov for the support, and also the MPs, in particular Serhiy Babak, who unfortunately is not here. They are supporting us, his Committee on Education, Research and Innovations, the members of this committee, and also Finance and Tax Policy Committee and Customs Policy, as Danilo Hetmantsev will listen to him, but unfortunately they need to be in the parliament today, so they have made video recordings. So I thank our MPs from the Tax Committee and Education Committee for the support and cooperation. In fact, we were worried that the Tax Committee could become a kind of an obstacle which would be difficult to overcome. In fact, no. We had really nice mutual understanding, and it's an opportunity for us, because in this law draft we are also speaking about the special tax conditions or incentives for scientific parks. So I thank all of the partners. I wish you fruitful work, dear colleagues. I would ask you to be active. 10 days which we have left for the public discussions should be used as much as possible with our use, though of course we understand that we'll have more dialogues and having the law draft getting through the central executive branch authorities and also introducing it into the parliament. We'll have the opportunity to discuss it with the MPs. However, the more mature the document is given now, the quicker it will get through all of the stages which it needs to get through, and it will reach the voting in the parliament. So I thank everyone again, and I invite you for active work.
Дякуємо, пане Оксане.
Thank you, Oksana, for your participation, inspiration, and leader's vision. Now we give the floor to Danilo Hetmantsev, MP of Ukraine, Chairman of Verkhovna Rada Committee on Finance, Taxation and Customs Policy. Again, a video recording. Dear friends, glory to Ukraine. I sincerely welcome you all to this event, which is dedicated to the development of national science in Ukraine. And it is not a formality, which unfortunately we are used to in Ukraine, but it is really dedicated to practical issues of supporting the development of science and education. And in this regard, I'm very grateful to Deputy Prime Minister Mr. Fedorov and the Minister of Education for the fact that we are finally starting to talk and take real steps to support and develop domestic science. It is no secret that science has been in decline throughout the period of Ukrainian independence, and the state is not the least to blame for this, as it has always put funding for science and assistance in the development of certain scientific fields at a low priority. And today's event confirms that our priorities have definitely changed and that we must do everything we can to not only use budget funds for certain scientific research, as we are unfortunately used to doing in Ukraine, for these or those researchers, or even worse, only to maintain certain scientific institutions that may not be needed by our state or our economy. So, from this use of budget funds, we need to move on to real projects that would be jointly funded by the state and business, which would result in applied innovations on the one hand, and on the other hand would also relate to basic scientific research. For this purpose, the most important thing is undoubtedly the sources of funding and the creation of a legal regime. And this is not only about taxes, but also about other aspects of legal regulation that would allow us to concentrate our brains, that would allow us to finance research, that would allow us to produce the results that we all want to achieve together. That is, to ensure the development of science in Ukraine. I am a supporter of the project that is being discussed today, which is actually in the title of our event today, and I will do my best to make it happen. I certainly support the efforts to include scientific residents in Dia City and to extend the Dia City regime to those who are exclusively engaged in science, together with business institutions, to create the most favorable mode for their work. At the same time, of course, the draft law that we are discussing today with the Ministry of Digital Transformation and the Ministry of Education needs to be agreed not only with the committee, but also with the Ministry of Finance and other ministries in the Cabinet of Ministers, so that we do not, say, just abandon the project and bury it in our conversations, so that we come up with a real draft law that would allow it to be passed in Verkhovna Rada, in the Parliament, and then implemented at the level of law enforcement. Therefore, I urge everyone today to exchange views, to develop a basis from which we could build on in the future, so that we can have a normal legislative initiative, and so that we do not forget anything that is so necessary for the scientific industry today. This is on the one hand, and on the other hand, we would undoubtedly make it impossible, as is often the case in our country, the use of the benefits and preferences that we are preparing for the scientific sector by those who want to either evade taxation or receive them illegally and without justification. I'm convinced that we have the same view of this task. I'm convinced that this task is a priority for us, and I'm convinced that we will achieve success together by joint efforts on this path. Thank you for the honor of speaking at the opening of your event, and please accept once again my sincere assurances that we will do everything possible to support national science. Thank you. Thank you, Danilo Alexandrovich, for valuable words and attention to our initiatives. The next is to speak is Julie Conan, USAID Mission Director in Ukraine.
Welcome remarks.
Дякую. Добрий день. It's great to be here with all of you today, and I feel so honored to be here with these panelists on both sides. Minister Lasovi from the Ministry of Education. I just look forward to hearing the results of this super important conversation. Your leadership, all of you, and your vision and your collaboration have brought the concept of Science City to this moment, and I recognize all of the hard work that has gone into this effort. After almost 3 years of full-scale war, Ukraine stands at a pivotal moment in its history. Building a tech and science-oriented economy is not just an opportunity, it is an imperative. It is how Ukraine will grow, create jobs, and continue to courageously resist against Russia's aggression. By investing in initiatives like the Science City, Ukraine is positioning itself as a world leader in innovation and economic resilience, following the success of countries like the United Kingdom. And my great colleague Stefan Kosov is here to talk from the United Kingdom. In UK, they've brought together academia and businesses, startups, and the state into one collaborative science park ecosystem to foster research and technical innovation. That idea has caught on here, and I can tell by the conversations so far that that idea is going to grow. Speaking on behalf of the United States, through USAID and our digital transformation activity, I will say that we're standing with you to advance this vision in Ukraine. This work is just part of our broader effort to foster innovation and boost economic resilience across Ukraine, including in partnership with many of you in this room today. For example, through our partnership, Dia.City has been able to register nearly 1,500 businesses, providing a legal and tax framework that enables Ukrainian tech companies to thrive. And another of our partners, the Dia.Business Center at Taras Shevchenko National University, has helped up to, or more than, 5,500 up-and-coming business leaders to develop the capabilities to startup creation, digital skills, leadership that they need to drive Ukraine's economy forward. I want to tell you also about one of our specific investments that exemplifies the kind of success that the cross-sector collaboration Science City will build. As part of our work to expand technical skills and inclusive participation in Ukraine's machine engineering sector, USAID has helped to develop a robotics laboratory at this tech startup school at Lviv Polytechnic National University. By providing advanced equipment for lab, robotic arms to collaborative robots, we're enabling the next generation of Ukrainians to gain hands-on experience in engineering and robotics and helping students acquire skills that are high in demand in industries like automation and robotics. This allows students to apply theoretical knowledge to real-world applications and scenarios, enhancing their problem-solving abilities and technical proficiency. This practical experience makes them more competitive in the job market and equips them with the kind of skills that are directly aligned with the needs of future industries, ensuring that they are well prepared for the demands of a very fast-changing global economy. But the laboratory is not just a teaching tool. It enables the university to build partnerships with Ukrainian businesses and the Ukrainian government, the idea that we've been talking about. It creates opportunities for students to work on real-world projects and strengthen the university's collaboration with the private sector. 500 students, both young men and young women, are currently working with this robotics equipment. And that is the impact of just one laboratory in one university. The potential impact of the Science.City initiative on Ukraine's future is indeed enormous. By broadening partnerships and streamlining processes, Science.City will attract private sector investments, establish regional innovation centers, and increase scientists' incomes, helping Ukraine to achieve the ambitious goals in its Win-Win 2030 strategy. I commend our Ukrainian partners for your vision and commitment to accelerating the transition to a knowledge-based economy here in Ukraine. USAID is your partner in these investments, and together we will create high-value jobs, attract investment, and drive GDP growth, all essential for Ukraine's recovery and global leadership, while simultaneously contributing to the global scientific community. So I'm very excited to see where this journey will take us, and I wish you luck in these conversations. Slava Ukraini.
Дякуємо.
Thank you so much, Ms. Julie, for all your support and for cooperation in implementation of our projects. And the final greeting remarks would be from Stefan Kosov, Director of Development Programs at the British Embassy in Ukraine.
Your welcome remarks.
Diakiu Dobrodain.
Thank you. Hello.
Your Excellencies, Minister Lisov Yi, partners and friends, it's an honour and a pleasure for me to be here today alongside our formidable partners from government, representatives of the science community, innovative businesses, our excellent colleagues from the Eurasia Foundation and BRDO, my good friend Julie from USAID, and all other distinguished guests that are here this morning. Following yet another night of relentless, indiscriminate attacks from Russia, it's heartwarming to see so many of you here today. And it's a reminder once again that we will not be intimidated and we will not be deflected from our task in preparing for a better and brighter future for Ukraine and all of its citizens. And it has to be said, despite almost 3 years of ongoing brutal war and all the many challenges that has been created for this country from that, I continue to be both impressed, amazed, and humbled by Ukraine's incredible ingenuity and creativity with this initiative that we're discussing today on science parks being yet another shining example of that. As we've heard from the speakers so far, Ukraine's economy now more than ever needs bold and innovative approaches based on science like this to underpin its long-term development and bolster its resilience. And I'm really, really proud that through the joint support of the US and the UK, through our digital transformation activity, that we've been able to help with the development of the concept of the Science City and all the underpinning legislation required to get the concept off the ground. It's really exciting, and also to underline that the Science City idea is not just an isolated endeavour. In fact, it's a core component of government of Ukraine's innovation strategy, which was also announced earlier this week. And I'm again delighted that the UK was able to support the development of that strategy through our Good Governance Fund. And I'm particularly pleased to see that the government is moving so fast with the implementation of that strategy, with this event today being just one example of that. We really look forward to seeing the Science City legislation being ratified by the Parliament, following all the necessary consultations like the important one that you are having today. It's desperately needed, as the Minister said. We also need to get the financing behind it, as the Minister underline, because there's no doubt that these ventures have the potential to play a really, really significant role in fostering innovation in Ukraine and supporting the country's recovery and growth. And as Julie was saying, we've seen this in the UK, where science parks play a crucial role in connecting business and science as part of a single connected ecosystem. We have over 150 science parks in the UK that draw in all the talent from our best universities, attract investments from the private sector, and contribute to the wider health of the economy. And for example, just one of these science parks that is located in the south of England in a city called Southampton contributed over £4 billion to the UK economy over just 2 years in 2020-21. So that's an illustration of the kind of potential that science parks can and do deliver. But what can science parks do for Ukraine? I see 4 key things. First and foremost, they serve as effective platforms for bringing together the expertise from the science community, from business and from government. And in this way, they help facilitate the rapid transformation of scientific ideas into practical solutions and business opportunities, shortening the pathway from research to market implementation. Secondly, they play a really crucial role in enhancing the capacity of higher education institutions and research organisations, creating opportunities for joint research and strengthening the role of universities as innovation hubs. And in so doing, they help foster the development of a skilled workforce that is critical for the needs of a modern economy. And as the Minister was saying in his introduction, the kind of workforce that Ukraine now desperately needs. Thirdly, science parks can help integrate Ukraine into the global high-tech market and attract international investment for collaborative projects. They can support the growth of local startups by attracting venture capital for innovation and those kinds of projects. And lastly, science parks can play a pivotal role in strengthening Ukraine's defence and industrial capabilities, helping ensure the country's long-term security and resilience. They provide a platform for the development of cutting-edge defence technologies such as UAVs, electronic warfare systems and other innovations critical for countering Russian aggression. And collaboration between research institutions and defence enterprises can accelerate the development and the deployment of these critical technologies. And I must say, I was delighted to see at first hand the potential in that particular area when I recently paid a visit to the Kyiv Aviation Institute, where the UK is also contributing directly to the development of a science park there. For Ukraine in particular, science parks can help to leave behind the Soviet legacy and the disconnect, which I think has existed for some time between teaching, research and business. We really expect and hope to see them helping unleash the creativity of Ukrainian inventors, facilitating new collaborations and tapping into the full potential of the Ukrainian innovation ecosystem. All in all, the potential is really huge, as a number of speakers have already mentioned. But if Ukraine gets this right, we estimate that science parks of themselves could deliver billions of hryvnias in increased turnover for business, enhanced revenues for universities themselves, and of course tax receipts for the Ministry of Finance. So a genuine win-win-win, in other words. And in summary, it goes without saying that supporting Science Park aligns very closely with our UK mission in Ukraine and our commitment to promote Ukraine's economic resilience during wartime and recovery thereafter, and to showcase a shared vision of a prosperous, innovative and resilient Ukraine. So I just really want to join my US colleagues in wishing you every success in this venture, and we all look forward to seeing the impressive results flowering in the years to come. So Dyakuyu and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, glory to Ukraine. Thank you so much, dear Stefan Konsa, for your contribution into development of our cooperation. And the next part of our discussion would be the presentation of Science City regime, which is going to speak about the barriers of the development of science parks and the mechanisms to solve them, to bridge them. Denis Gorbatov, Deputy Minister of Science and Education of Ukraine. Mr. Denis, you're welcome. Hello, dear colleagues, dear friends. This is the greatest pleasure to see the full room of people, the full house. I'm very sorry if you lacked the chair. Sorry, we had some miscalculations here. But that's very good that this platform and this event we are conducting today brings together all the key stakeholders from the innovations and science area, those who are going to create the new Ukrainian innovative economy. For sure, these are representatives of our top universities, key research institutions, representatives of the government, executive authorities here. Apart from the Ministry of Science and Education and Ministry of Digital Transformation, we have Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Finance. And that's the greatest pleasure that we hear the words of support from Verkhovna Rada, Supreme Council of Ukraine, because this initiative is of paramount importance, and we really need support to achieve the synergetic effect. Also, I would like to express my gratitude to our international partners, the government of USA, government of Great Britain, and BRDO, Better Regulation Delivery Office, for support of this very important project. So we are saying that now we are finding ourselves in the place when the economy which we used to have before the full-scale invasion is practically non-existent now. You know that a lot of major enterprises were destroyed. Economy of the raw material type, which was prevalent in Ukraine, is no longer vital because it was destroyed. So Ukraine finds itself in dilemma to create the economy of new type. For sure, this shall be the economy of knowledge, economy of innovations, economy of added value. And we all have to think in what way the products we are creating would be making their contribution into the export capacity, in what way they will be creating the added value. And this is not possible without innovations. I would like to mention, in order to develop all the mentioned areas, it's of paramount importance to have funding, to have the financial resources we are involving into the innovations in science sector. I would like to mention that certain figures have been already mentioned, but this slide is about figures as well. So here you can actually see the share of the scale of funding of science from the budget in various countries of the world. Israel would be the leader, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, China. Actually, all the European countries also have got quite a good percentage of funding the science from their state budget. It's about 5-10 times more than Ukraine can allow funding science so far. What would be the way out? Partially it was mentioned by Mr. Minister of Science and Education. It's clear that the state budget as of now is not capable of increasing the funding tenfold, but at the very very same time, we can be speaking about concentrating the state funding within the best higher educational institutions, research institutions, and about creating the conditions for involvement of the extra budgetary funds to develop this very area. And actually, that's the goal of Science City project as well. Recently, in December 2024, the world saw the survey or the Global Innovation Index, actually, of 2024, which shows the ranking of the countries, and they rank from first to last depending on the development of their innovations and the development of innovative infrastructure. Switzerland is the leader here, as well as United States. Ukraine ranks 60. And you can see that almost all the neighboring countries are higher than Ukraine, some significantly higher. At the very same time, potential of Ukraine as a country with the income lower than the average, we rank fourth. This tells us that actually Ukraine is properly using the resources it has and is displaying quite a good result. Now, some statistics. So what is this? Place number 60 is comprised of the lighter quadrants would be the ones where we have higher than 60. You can see that we have quite good ratings in human capital, in R&D potential, level of development of business, and also the highest results, the top results would be in the category knowledge and results of R&D. This tells us that potential of Ukraine from the viewpoint of technologies, innovations, and R&D is quite high. What prevents us from moving forward? Well, including in terms of this very rating, you can see the first column would be institutional development. That's namely that state policy, that's tax incentives, that's creating the conditions for the development of innovations. Here we are ranked beyond 100, unfortunately. And actually, together with the weak development of infrastructure, these positions are bringing us down and are defining the place of Ukraine at the level of 60, but not in top 30 or top 40 of the leading countries of the world in terms of developing innovations. We were analyzing, together with our colleagues, with partners, a range of tools which are out there globally to support the development of R&D, to support the development of innovations. And for sure, very often this would be tax incentives or the direct state funding. There was the report of OECD countries, and this report tells us about, well, you can see there's the range of countries which are leaders in innovations. They are either getting the direct funding of the business, including not just research institutions, or in a light blue, they have the tax support.
For instance, we're saying that we have here the level of funding of science is only 0.33 and 0.17 from the state budget. That is for all the science, all the institutions, universities, and so on. The UK is allocating only for the direct researchers for businesses 0.15% of GDP, plus 0.3 are different tax incentives. So, in fact, Ukraine is just funding zero in this sphere. We do not fund our R&D business. Undoubtedly, we have it. By the way, I forgot to mention, it's very important that here at the event we have the representatives of R&D businesses, pharmaceutical companies, agrarian sector, IT companies, but the state does not fund that. The world is thinking in a different way. The world is funding that and having certain tax discounts. The next slide is about the analysis how it is taking place in the world, different ways of incentivizing for the development of R&D in the EU countries. And we can see that there was a certain survey conducted for 3 years, the survey of R&D exactly. And we can see here, if we look at the categories of mechanisms of support which exist in the EU countries, again, those are either tax credits or tax deduction or allowances, the points which are connected with that. So we may say that our project of Science City, which we are presenting today, is not just some idea which emerged only in Ukraine and only in the Ministry of Education. It exists in the world. The world is considering the development and support of science and innovations in this way. What's also important is this slide, which tells us about what were the years and when different countries began the support of R&D sector in direct financial support or using tax incentives. We can see that all of the leading countries, we can see Australia, Canada, Norway, Spain, United Kingdom, during different years, mostly it took place after 2010, they were actively trying to use the mechanisms of fiscal support. For instance, such country as Norway, as you can see here, in fact is a leader. 80% of all the support of small and medium enterprises of R&D is used by them as tax discounts or incentives. So which conclusions we can make looking at this analysis, which in fact I mentioned above? Now, they are presented at the slide. Undoubtedly, the efficiency of tax incentives and also the use of different incentives, tax incentives for different types of companies, small, medium, bigger businesses. That is also about the intercorrection between the direct funding of scientific research and the use of tax incentives, and it shows the efficiency of direct tax support for the development of science. The countries which are creating this support, which are conducting this support and understand the importance of the development of science and their influence into economy, they are using different mechanisms of incentivization, mostly fiscal ones. Now let us come back to Ukraine. Which issues exist in Ukraine? Well, I think all of you know about them, but still I can't help dwelling on that. Definitely, that is overregulation. Overregulation of activity can be different types of licenses or permits you need to get. A huge issue is also fiscal pressure. If the university or a scientific state institution is conducting a certain project as a commission of the business, the amount of taxes which they pay is 70+%. So the majority of the funds mostly are brought back to the state, though this is the money mostly is not of budget or of state budget nature, so it does not incentivize universities and scientific institutions to invest, to take money, attract money into the universities and to deal with science, which should play an applied role. The outflow of intellectual capital. You can see the graph that, in fact, during the last 10 years, the number of researchers per 1 million of population has decreased more than twice. A complicated and lengthy process of procurement. You know that scientific institutions and universities are the state ones. They conduct procurement through certain state systems, public systems like Prozoro, which makes the process too long, which delays it or makes it a bit not relevant. Very often it leads to the situation that the universities are forced to work either with the raw material and or not to conduct any researches because they don't have enough time to procure quickly the high-quality materials and equipment. And about obsolete material, technical base and infrastructure, I will not delve deeper into that. We all know that. We know that many laboratories have installed the equipment of the 70s, the 80s, and in the best case scenario, the beginning of the early 90s. The issue connected with scientific parks as of today, as it was mentioned, we have 37 of them, 5 of them are more or less active, and 1 of them is successful. Only one. One of the issues that the indicators of science parks are not considered in the indicators of activity of universities and scientific institutions. So the management administration of the universities is not interested in the efficient work of the park. We've found out, identified this issue, and this is what also deters the development. The lack of real mechanisms of rent of property, which is temporarily not used. We know that we can see the demography, the number of students is decreasing, the square meters are becoming not used, they are not used anymore, so it would be logical to provide these spaces for the development of researches and innovations. Low indicators of commercializations of developments. We know that the number of contracts for the licenses, in fact, is measured in the country maybe by dozens or maybe even by separate ones. For the universities and academic institutions, unfortunately, it's not the main type of activity, and this is done in the other way, in a different way in the world. Let me tell you a bit what is the way of the researcher in the development of R&Ds in the university. About 7 to 10% of master's graduates are getting to the next level, but more or less 7 to 8,000 people. Out of them, 70% of the graduates, those who have had the postgraduate studies, they stay in the university, they are employed there, and 20% of them move to the knowledge business, the team and tech, which are developing actively and creating their own companies. It is totally the opposite in the world. The universities in the world countries are not preparing stuff for themselves. This is the stuff which has additional knowledge, which has expertise. Such people need to work for the economy. What is taking place later? The universities are partially cooperating with the right part of the graph, the real sector of economy. Those are direct contracts, but in fact, they are not that numerous, and in not of the all of the universities. Still, during the recent years, we could have the active use of the mechanism of creation of the scientific institutions and private entrepreneurs, sole proprietors. Why is it done? Not to pay 70% of taxes. You can create a separate private entrepreneur status. You pay then only 10 times less of taxes. You get a grant. It seems nice. But if we speak about the development of institutions, universities, academic institutions, it deprives them of the best potential. It makes them weaker, and it weakens also the state, because the state loses these centers, hubs of the training of experts, which the universities should be. Our idea is to change that. We need to create a structure which would be as attractive for work of researchers as sole proprietor status, which would have a material base, which would have also a certain fiscal mode, and we can see also the structure is a science park, in fact. A bit about science parks. As it was already mentioned, 37 of them, 5 of them are active. In fact, the amount of research conducted in the science park is only 0.2% of the overall amount of the Ukrainian researchers, which are not that numerous. Let us just let me remind you the first slide. During the recent years, the science parks have installed the equipment for scientific research with a sum of 0 hryvnia. That is nothing. As of the taxes paid by science parks per year, 5 million hryvnia altogether. I mean all of the types of the taxes here, including the military fee. And also let me tell you about the VAT. That is also a very interesting story, because if the state is funding the researchers in the university or an academic institution, there is no VAT. But if we find a business which tells us, okay, we would like to fund this development, and the state says no, you should pay additionally 20% of VAT. For the state, on the one hand, it's good. But in fact, the amount of all of the paid VAT by the universities and academic institutions is 40 million hryvnia, 37 something. So it is 8,000th of all of the VAT paid in the country. So when we cancel this kind of tax, it will not mean anything for the state. It will not influence, because 40 million, which is 8,000th in the trillion budget, is almost zero. Which components of Science City concept we foresee now? This is the main, in fact, schematic image of how we can see that and how it should work. So we have the budget institution, we have the law on science parks. According to this law, together with the businesses, private partners, the university can create a separate enterprise. In the West, they say it's a spin-off company, which looks like the limited liability company, LLC, which is the science park. According to certain requirements, which are very severe or harsh, the science park can get them. It can get into the mode or regime of Dia City and use all of the discounts which this regime is using or offering. What are those discounts? In the regime of Dia City, we have 5% of the tax. We also, as it was already the personal income tax, the tax for which is the military tax is increased for everyone. But still we have one of the severe conditions, that is requirements for remuneration. We all say that the scientists and academics and researchers in the country get low salaries. That's true. According to our calculations, the average income level of an academic is 12,000 hryvnia. That is really a very low sum of money. But in the law on academic activity, we have the norm that the salary of the junior scientific fellow should be approximately 35,000 hryvnia. So we are saying that to be introduced into the conditions of Dia City regime, one of the conditions should be to provide the proper salary, 600 euro plus, with further increases. Speaking about Science City, I already mentioned about zero VAT, about zero fees, and about the zero fees for the transfer of equipment for the use by the science parks. This is the main framework, what is offered by Science City mode or regime. Let me tell you a bit about salaries. I started with that. We were speaking about private entrepreneurs' statuses, whether it is profitable to conduct certain works through the university, through sole proprietor status, or what we offer with the use of this mode. What we have now in the university, in fact, if you have the contract for 100 hryvnia and 80 hryvnia out of this 100 is the salary, you're instantly paying 56 hryvnia of taxes to the state. If you understood that it's too much, you create your sole proprietor status and you pay only 6 hryvnia. Obviously, it is really profitable, but it weakens simultaneously the institutions themselves, and it creates the gap and makes the use of research base impossible. You cannot use additional expertise and so on. In Science City, we offer a different way. If the science park for Science Park, this tax will be 36 hryvnia, and if the Science Park is becoming a resident of Dia City, it's 25 hryvnia, which is, in fact, at the level of the world practice and will be attractive to comply with certain requirements of the researchers. What do we offer? The simplified conditions for public procurement for science parks. We offer the discounts for the rent of public property, universities and academic institutions without auctions. We offer tax incentives to introduce new equipment, which which could be research and scientific equipment. We also offer the indicators of Science Park which can be considered as the indicators of university or academic institution. All of these points, from the perspective of the legislation, look like this. It looks rather complicated. Those are 10 laws, 2 codes, and that is why we need the support of you as stakeholders. That is why we need the support of the ministries. That is why we need the support of the Parliament, Verkhovna Rada. Only together we'll be able to introduce those changes. Undoubtedly, there are certain processes which can help us safeguard the process. We don't want to create any additional corrupt opportunities in the development of innovations. The law draft itself foresees some of those safeguards. There are several safeguards which we invented at the stage of the preparation to the public discussion. All of them undoubtedly will also need additional work on them after the public discussion is over. Then the figures, the indicators, why we are doing that. In fact, they are rather modest, I would say. They are, in fact, too low, several times lower. But of course, we speak about the increase of tax level, higher efficiency, as we said, the increase of the number of science parks with activities, with active work. We speak about the increase of the job places of innovative type. We're also speaking about the increase of salaries, the remuneration for the best researchers which will be working in the science parks. That's it from me. Obviously, I urge you to discuss all of that. We made it on purpose. This event is done in the middle of the public discussion period, so that we could have enough time to work on the law draft, taking into account our discussion today. Thank you. Thank you, Denis, for such a substantial presentation. Before moving to the discussion, we thank Mr. Minister for your participation. We know that your schedule is saturated, so we thank you that you joined us today. Thank you. And then we are going on with our agenda, and let us move to the discussion of Science City regime, which will take place as a round table. Our today's discussion will be focused on the 3 key issues. First of all, stimulating R&D on the basis of higher education institutions, stimulating the involvement of private capital in R&D through science parks, and tax incentives for R&D development within science parks and the sphere of science according to their work. For the discussion of these important topics, we invited a wider circle of experts who represent state authority, businesses and international institutions. Let me introduce our participants of the roundtable. Alexander Bornyakov, Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Denis Kurbatov, Deputy Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine. Chris Watson, CEO of Greenfield Investments, and he will join us online. Greg Garris, CEO of Omega Group, who will also join us online. Ludmila Kryzhanovska, the head of the investment fund at Promprilat, she is online as well. Anastas Boyko, Deputy Head of the Project Support of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Oleksiy Dorohany, Executive Director of the Office of Efficient Regulation. Timofey Milovanov, the President of Kyiv School of Economy. Olha Budnik, Advisor and an authorized person of the President of Ukraine on the Fund of the President of Ukraine on support of education, science and sports. Nazar Podolchak, Director of the Science Park City, the National University of Lviv Polytechnic. Ksenia Semenova, Acting Rector of the Kyiv Aviation Institute. Valentin Chebanov, First Deputy Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Scientific and Technological Complex Institute of Single Crystals of the National Academy of Science of Ukraine, the head of the faculty at the university named after Vasil Karazin. Mikhailo Tukalo, Director of the Institute of Molecular Biology and Genetics of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. Dmytro Derkach, CEO of the group of companies and Director General of Urea Farm. We are sure that today's discussion will be fruitful and constructive, and its outcomes will help us form an efficient regime of DSCT. We invite all of the participants to be active in the discussion and share their ideas. The online participants, please write your questions into the chat of the broadcast, and we'll definitely let our speakers know about them. Please mention the name and who you would like to answer your question, and if you'd like to ask this question to someone exactly. And after this roundtable, we'll have the Q&A session to mention your opinions for our speakers. We'll pose our questions to the speakers. Every question will foresee the answer of 2 or 3 esteemed participants of the roundtable, and I will give the floor to you. So let us begin with the questions how the private-public partnership can strengthen different objectives of private companies focused on revenue and public institutions focused on their own development, how it can be balanced and influence the society. The first question is Timofey Milovanov, Alexander Bornyak and Denis Kurbatov. Timofey, please. Thank you so much. I have a comment, in fact, first. I will try to, so that it could be interesting. Do you hear me better? Okay. So I think it's so important. Let me zoom out, because I have the opportunity to say something what other people will not say. And I have the strategy of disruption. So that is why I act like that. So you see, we are at war. And we are losing in this war. This is how it is perceived by our foreign partners, in particular by the United States of America. It is dangerous for us, in spite of the real situation. How are we assessed by others? We are assessed that from the economic point of view, we are in the best position than Russia. And it is good news for us. But in the military part, we are in the worse position than Russia. Why? Because it is bigger. And the argument which I can hear among the Americans, intelligence community or the military, I can hear that a small Soviet army, though it is transformed, cannot win over a big Soviet army which is not transformed. That is the attitude, and it means that we lack infantry. And we don't have infantry because people are dying. And people are dying because we don't have that many people as Russia can afford itself. And the only solution for that is robots. And robots need innovations. So we came back to science in Ukraine. If we do not have serious attitude towards the saturation of our R&D on science with the capacities to work for the army, today and during the next 10 years, then Ukraine may never exist in 10 years how we know it. Because when and if we have certain truce or peace, it is not guaranteed that we'll have the same security guarantees we'd like to get. For instance, to have NATO or European troops here, or we would be flooded with weapons. There is no guarantee that Trump or any other administration will agree to such guarantees. It's not the guarantee that Russia will agree for that and will not go on fighting. So it means that we need to rely upon ourselves. It means that not only now, but in 10 years, we need to have a strong technological army, and that we need our own science. The budget should be spent for our science so that the capacity could be here and dependent on us. That is why science parks is not only good that we are beginning to implement them, that's what we need to do if we'd like Ukraine to survive. Then, the second sphere, if we just forget about the war for a minute, let us think about the direction the world is moving to. We have two ruinations. First of all, AI disruption. If we look at the articles, unfortunately internal closed articles, but some of them are public, which AI labs tell us about, which are developing AI today in the world, like OpenAI or Google or others. They say that if we have the linear extrapolation for the increase of the computing capacity, all of the cognitive functions would be able to be outsourced. What is the cognitive function? This is the function which can be done remotely. That is, any cognitive task which can be given to the employee or someone, and you don't need to be physically present for brainstorming, for non-verbal communication, for creativity, for intuition. Any person, with all of the functions which can be described and given to some website and to hire remotely an employee, these functions will be done by AI. And it does not mean that there will be some managers or leaders functions vanishing. It does not mean that they will disappear. It means that some of the qualified jobs will be outsourced. It means unemployment for the majority of people. And also it means that the countries will become stronger if they have energy for computing. And we need to pose the question, which kind of economy we see in 10 years, so that we could become part of this economy of the world. And it means that today we need to create science parks which will think about new energy, new technologies in bio, in pharma, in human development, in anything. We don't need to discuss that we lack some deregulation in education and that we have post-Soviet universities which are working wrong or they have plagiarism. That is the death of Ukraine. This is the topic. We need to wake up and understand that, first of all, we face a challenge from Russia, and secondly, the ruining of the standard economic approaches in the world. We have geopolitical shift, and the answer is science in Ukraine, not just to hope that using energy, draft and identity of Ukraine, it can be done. So I really support science parks as an idea. I think that we need to calculate for the parliament all of the evidences that there won't be any losses of taxes, otherwise it would be blocked. It's important to calculate and show the figures, and it's important to make a deal with the EU about their vision. Stefan said today that he is supporting that from the EU. It's nice, but if we go to IMF or EU alignment and they tell us the VAT is wrong, then it won't work. So we need certain alignment. So it is desirable to have support from them. And no cap salaries. I'm against that. I think that the salaries should be increased. It should be a requirement. When the minimal salaries were increased, I think that we need to increase the minimum salaries for science parks. But that's my own opinion, because we need to increase the salaries in the science market so that the talents could stay in science. We need to pay more, and the regulatory part can help incentivize, though it is an anti-competitive method. And also I require to equalize the rules of games between the private and public institutions. Discrimination for those or these should stop. And this is a paradox. We try to deregulate the public institutions, and simultaneously we do not, well, not in this law draft, but altogether, we discriminate still certain private institutions instead of privatizing public institutions, you see? We try not to allow to work for the private institutions which are not regulated, and deregulate to go on having control over science from the perspective of the state. I require that it should be stopped. I require that we should allow the science develop. Thank you so much. Thank you, Timothy, for your vision. And we thank you for the problematics which you specifically described. I hope that during this roundtable we will hear the answers for these questions. Now I give the floor to Denis Kurbatov. Denis?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Timothy. Well, actually speaking, all this initiative is aimed at actually bringing together business and science, bringing together the public sector and the private one. We see in what way the leading countries of the world are developing. The market economy and then the private sector is actually more stable than the public one. And implementing this reform for all the universities and for all the research institutions rather than work through science parks, it's not a very viable initiative, which is why we are trying to create spin-off companies. This was a good question, whether private universities are involved, leading private universities are involved into this initiative. For sure, yes. The draft law stipulates that these universities can also create their own science parks, their spin-off companies, and work on R&D, and for this R&D to be implemented into the real sector of economy. It's important because for many years, and I'm not speaking about each and everyone, but the great share of science, of R&D was and is a thing in itself, meaning something that works not for the sake of the result, but for the sake of the form, just to get certain thank you letters, certain awards to get PhD. I understand that Ukraine finds itself in an overcomplicated situation, and the question is how to survive. In order to survive, the science shall create these added values, but the science shall be given the tools for that. The state support shall be allocated, involved for that purpose, which is why we've founded this project. And that's an answer to the question about the public-private partnership. And I'm not going to go into more details, but we believe that's of paramount importance now. Thank you, Mr. Denis. Mr. Alexander, the floor goes to you. Sure, greetings to everyone. You know, I really agree with Mr. Timothy in a lot of his opinions. We really have this attempt to control the science by the state, and it's being done through these obsolete methods and approaches which have been there for dozens of years, and somehow it is perceived as a norm. When we were creating DSCT, in general, what logics were we pursuing? In the first place, we have to have a look in what way business operates and use certain regulations based on the business processes of the companies. It's not possible that the regulation is existing in one world, but the business is building their own business processes using other rules. It needs to be more harmonized. And speaking about science, we have some distortion here. So, in this regard, there shall be, so to say, privatization, let me call it that way, and this mechanism shall become very logical to meet the laws of science, meaning we need to relax in terms of regulation, meaning there is this private organization. I agree that it shall have it shall be given certain incentives, because science would be about, venture investments, and if we start using taxes there, it will never lead to a good result. You need to understand that we might speak about some years when people are investing huge money, but then they get the great return of investment, but in some cases that's a real collapse. It's as with startups. I believe in general this is a correct step forward. Yes, a lot of laws need to be amended and changed, but if we don't do that, the Ukrainian science wouldn't have the future. Everything that works now, or how it works now, is a way nowhere. We can't leave it as is, expecting that it will bring some dividends. No, that's nonsense. So this very concept we're discussing today is viable. You know, we are telling to the representatives of science, with no problems, easily you can create an organization which would belong to you. You are the beneficiaries and you can easily involve investments there. There's this word in IT, a framework, meaning that's the set of tools you actively use. This framework would be just user-friendly registration with certain commitments, and it shall comply with the announced activity. This shall really be about science, and it shall be done very quickly, you know, with the transparent conditions. So the complicatedness of this framework would grow with the complicatedness of your activities. Meaning, you've got an idea of some research, etc., but you're just starting. So everything shall be very quick. But if you already have a lot of people, you've got a lot of investments, yeah, it might be more complicated to get registered, to get started. Maybe there will be more tax burden, but it's not that, you know, these burdens lie on your shoulders at the very beginning. You have to pay hundreds of hryvnias or thousands of hryvnias of taxes. No, that's not a way forward. So I believe that the combination of this, so to say, specific tools for the science. This would be some incentives for procurement of equipment, and then stimulation of this company being good fit for investments. And if they're in DSCT, corporatively, everything will be arranged properly. And to crown it all, I would like to say, you know, the question was about public-private partnership. So, as I see this, it all shall turn into a private initiative. We can have some transition period, and as I see that, I reiterate, the best option of development would be to really have it all in private hands, as they have it in plenty of countries. Usually these are not-for-profit organizations, but they are private. And the final thing to mention, we also plan to add to DSCT. You know, we are working on the concept DSCT Invest. That's creating conditions for simple registration of venture funds in Ukraine. Again, using the very same model I just mentioned, meaning, you know, an example. You know, speaking about science, unfortunately, the investments are at the very same conditions. For example, you have 10 million euro fund and you have 10 investors. So the complicatedness would be equal to the situation when you have thousands of investors and you've got billions of hryvnias already. How can we speak about venture investments if that's so complicated to register it all and start it all? No, we will create the appropriate conditions which would be user-friendly. For example, general limited partners would be 10 and up to 10 or 20 million euro. Then the framework would be very easy, you know, something you can do even online. And if we combine it with a scientific component, DSCT as a corporatization tool, and this way we are going to have the ecosystem, which would be really viable. This can work. Thank you so much. You know, private interest is of importance here, but every private interest has got an influence on the societal interest, because it all ends up in development of economy, filling in of the budget, and access to innovative, competitive products. And this is good for the society and citizens. And what's important now would be robotization and saving lives of our people. So right you are, and there's no doubt that the concept of public-private partnership is very important. question. Thank you for answering this question. And we proceed to another question. In what way can we support trust and transparency between private and public partners in the area of science? And this is the question to Greg Garris, Chris Watson, and Oleksiy Dorogain. So, Chris Watson, please be the first to answer.
Well, to start with, I agree with all of the other presenters when they say that Ukraine has a problem with corruption and the remnants of the Soviet-style bureaucracy and regulation. Transparency, clarity, and certainty about the business environment is critical to international investment. I simply would not be here if Ukraine was not facing an existential threat that really threatens the entire world. It's just not rationally profitable in normal circumstances. In March of 22, I arrived in Ukraine with 40 drones and IFAC kits. Since then, we've contributed and facilitated over $3 million in Ukraine in humanitarian aid, drone production, and developed advanced IT software for simplifying document management and reducing the opportunities for corruption. Much of the money we've invested has not been as effective as we'd like. Too much of the early money we spent was ineffective, and some was simply stolen. We have had success, though, with the Science Park, but it's a rare exception. Nazar Polichonk was a critical partner who worked with us to figure out how we could work together and made our efforts much more powerful. The thousands of drones we produced would not have happened if we'd not been introduced to the Science Park. It's hard to do business in Ukraine. We face bureaucracy, corruption, bandits, border issues, tax codes. We've spent so much management time just figuring out how to work with the bureaucracy rather than R&D. And it's important to understand it's easier and more profitable for a smart, non-corrupt person to make money outside of Ukraine. That has to be changed. Improving the Science Park investment regime is a good step into fixing the situation. Specifically, the VAT tax on R&D cost us to reduce our operations. We were already donating and selling drones at cost. Having to pay a 20% VAT on things we donated to the warriors on the front line or sold for less than our cost reduced the what we could supply. And we only discovered this tax at the end of the year. I had very unkind words to say about the Ukrainian tax regime when I discovered that. FOPs. I think FOPs are a trap, specifically. Because it reduces the size of the business activities you can do. And then you create multiple FOPs, and then you're simply managing your FOPs. I mean, there's standard, profitable, easy to understand, good, easy ways to collect revenue from international regimes that Ukraine ultimately needs to adopt, because you need a simpler tax code for international investment. So whatever you can do with supporting the Science Park's free trade zone regulations to make it more understandable, more transparent for international investors, or even for Ukrainians, is critical. You've got to improve the court systems. You've got to have binding international arbitration using international arbitrators, because frankly, I don't trust the courts, and I don't trust if I have a contract that it's going to be enforced. And that's why the Science Park is a critical partner for us international investors. And really, I really appreciate being invited here today. The questions we are all asking here today are critical for Ukraine's future. And it's especially important for the Ukrainians in the audience to understand we can help you, your friends can help, but only Ukraine can save Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. Thank you very much for your time.
Дякуємо, Кріс.
Thank you so much, dear Chris, for your contribution to this event, and thank you about your opinion as regards science parks and the recommendations. And we are giving the floor to Mr. Greg.
Yes. Chris, thank you for your comment. These are the hard ones. I wouldn't be making them about Ukraine. I would be making them about Poland 35 years ago. I was asked to kind of prepare. There's a big echo coming back, by the way. I was asked to prepare past, present, and future of my experience. If you confirm that that's still legitimate, I will do it. Otherwise, I'll try to speak to the question. Anybody? Do you want the past, present, and future, or do you want to speak to trust and transparency?
Та я думаю, можемо відповісти, хто
Well, actually, let me ask those who asked the question, what do you prefer? Dear participants of this roundtable, could you prompt me?
Shorten the past. I arrived in Poland when the Berlin Wall fell. I had a U.S. government project called the Gift of Democracy. The Senate of Poland had been closed in 1946. It was reopened in 1989, and they needed IT to operate. I went from that to some engagement, compensated engagement, writing the new telecom law. The opportunity in Poland is quite different than the opportunity now in Ukraine. I came from the United States with more than 100 lines of fixed line telephony per capita to Poland that had 7. It was Soviet strategy to prevent the people to communicate with each other. So this was just Disneyland for me, and I spent the last 35 years correcting it. As a result of this ministry level, I was hired by the state operator. We pulled the first fiber optics, and those are my credentials for exclusively doing private business after that. I got to do Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola and Pizza Hut and McDonald's at the same time. And those were the early investors. These were the ones that could really operate quite independently, had full kind of onboarding skills in any new country. And the simultaneous issue, to put it in kind of simple terms, was the collaboration between the kleptocrats and the cowboys. I think that part's hopefully over. Poland was a reboot after communism. Ukraine will be a reboot after the war. In this third round in Poland, first it was the setting up the retail opportunity that didn't previously exist. Then it was setting up the commercial office buildings. As the house operator, the telecom partner, I think I invested in $3 billion of foreign direct investments. This was still the cowboys at first, and now it's the bankers and the pension funds, and everything's changed. My experience in Ukraine has been something completely different. I had 40 Ukrainian electricians working for me when the war broke out. To a man, they stood up and went back when the war started. I went to the Orthodox Church in town. I brought 8 Ukrainians home. 5 are still working. I met Yaroslav Klaknik, who introduced me to SoftServe and to the Polytechnic Startup School. And we began that work in 23. On exactly February 24th, Nazar was in my office in Poland, and we opened the Skocin-Nowy front. We formed a joint venture. That joint venture has built to a level of 20 Ukrainians in Lviv, another group in Split in Croatia, and another group in Wrocław, and about 10 Poles who joined them. Our 5 AI engineers are probably the top and most skillful and most creative on planet Earth, in the top 100. We have built software which will correct the kind of platform problem on planet Earth. Civilization has changed from the family level, the individual level. Kids started to become helpless in COVID everywhere, and they're becoming hopeless teenagers. And I believe with a float coach with an icon in Ukraine's colors on every screen of IM2B is going to correct that on a global scale. Ukraine's role in developing this software is already known in Korea, in America, in France, in Germany. It's the second round of our IM2B software. But what we've done in the startup school has almost nothing to do with it except the same name. It is fantastic. It will have millions of subscribers. It will ultimately have a fintech that's developed in Ukraine. And we will do the expert launch on February 24th of this year, 1 year from the startup date of the joint venture. I have had not a single problem in transportation, negotiation, collaboration, delegation with this team led by Yarek and Nazar, and with a platform that has been created by Nazar, that's been led by Yarek. And the results of this, which is intentionally a commercial project, absolutely a private initiative with no public funding involved, will actually change the world. So I can speak to a long history of the development in Poland. It has to start with the government getting out of the way. It has to pass through the unfortunate kleptocracy phase, and it has to go to entrepreneurs supported by adequate funding. I would speak to the first presenter and say you didn't mention the one totally confounding issue in the war, which is simply nuclear. You're the nation, the only nation that gave up nuclear weapons, and the great confounding issue is the evil person who is currently in charge of them in Russia. We're all watching Trump's negotiating tactics. I don't know if threatening to take over Greenland is somehow proving that he's equally crazy. I hope so. I certainly voted for him. I think he's the right solution, and I think he's serious about bringing this war to an end. And then the future of Ukraine will have to recover. In the reboot of Poland was based on euphoria. The West had won. The Cold War was over. Everybody knew Polacks, and certainly in America, the largest Polish city on earth is actually Chicago. There's well-known Ukrainians and very intelligent Ukrainians all over the world, but it doesn't have this very long history. These second-generation families, as we did in America. So there was euphoria, there was a victory, and everybody rushed to join it. Pizza Hut was open in 6 months. The Marriott Hotel was open in a month. In Ukraine, you have to remember that the level of politics got Trump impeached. It can't be more confusing than that. The possibility for a very simple American to imagine the end of the world, if they're a baby boomer, is very easy. We used to hide under our desks to protect ourselves. And Ukraine will have to emerge with transparency zones, with the most limited engagement in the business itself of government and bureaucracy and agents and special players, and really step back, get out of the way. The DIA whole program is fabulous. To really, as it was presented by your president and by your minister, who are world-leading representation, as a way not to meet a politician in the process of establishing your business is really the new best practices on planet Earth. So I've been all in. I have a home for Ukrainians. We were giving free telephone calls for 2 years in all of our landlord relationships. I'm all in for more than a year with the joint venture, and it's a success. When I made this presentation to my Harvard Business School reunion, a lot of people said, good luck.
Пане Греф, вимушена трошки вас перервати і нагадати.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you a little bit and remind you that we give 4 to 5 minutes to the presentation of each speaker. Please wrap up. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Okay, I wrap up.
Дякую вам.
Thank you so much. In the first place, thank you for sharing your own experience and thank you for that huge, great support you are providing to Ukraine, to Ukrainians. Thank you for sharing the experience about startups with the Polytechnic University. We have this project we are implementing and it's going to be interesting to discuss it in more details with you later. And thank you for recommending us actually building the cooperation between the state and business and science. And thank you so much for your geopolitical vision and support. And I would like to give the floor to Alexei Dorohanis as well. Thank you so much. I'll try to be brief. We represent the team which was performing this very research and was working on the draft law. I would like to use the time slot given to me to mention a few words about the format of this work. There are two approaches to roundtable discussions. On the first place, that's a well-directed play where everybody is claiming that they support the initiatives the topic of the roundtable is dedicated to. And there's this stereotype: if there's no opportunity to avoid participation in the round discussion, okay, you need to participate and praise whatever's happening. But if you have an opportunity not to participate, then you avoid it because it's not a frank talk. But there is this other approach to roundtables, and we see more of this. That's a mechanism of consolidation when the policy makers are offering their vision of how to solve all the existing problems, and other stakeholders whose problems are being discussed. As a rule, they provide the feedback whether the counterparts understand the problems properly or not, whether the solutions that were offered are great or not. And I strongly hope that in the other half of this discussion, we will hear more from the stakeholders, from the science parks, representatives of businesses, from people of science, whether they've liked the presentation, whether the solutions offered are proper, whether the key challenges are mentioned in a proper way. And that's of great value actually for the policymakers, for the researchers, because what really matters would be not what experts think, because there are two approaches to policymaking. In the first place, you have to find the best experts and they will do it right. And the second understanding of this process would be more analytical, when there's no monopoly for the truth, and the correct solution would be substantiated, informed decision. And in order to really make great informed decisions, it's important to understand the positions of the stakeholders. I know there are a lot of great questions you've got there, but I urge everybody to offer some new opinions that were not voiced out before, and what's actually good in this draft law and what needs to still be improved. That's my offer. In what way our activity activities were done. We were analyzing the best international practices, we were communicating with the stakeholders, and it's worth understanding that the draft law would be like 10% of the mentioned activities. Quite often somebody can call me and tell me, Alexei, we need this draft law in a week. But in order to solve the problems of stakeholders, we need to do a lot of research. We need to have discussions, roundtable discussions like this, public discussions, in order to precisely understand the process and solve it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alexei. Thank you that you made conclusions of our visionary part. Let's move to the practical issues and let's speak with the businesses who are present here at the round table. Let us ask about your opinion. Why do you think that this sphere of science development is important for businesses? And why Science City method can be the efficient tool for such businesses in Ukraine? This is the question to Dmitro Derkach and Anastas Boyko. Dmitro, please. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the question. As of the first part, whether it is important to develop this knowledge-based business, of course, definitely yes, because it's about value added, about the position of ours as a state, and about our life resilience. The previous speakers, in fact, already started their speeches with that without knowledge intensity, in fact, we can't dream about the future, in particular about our agency as a state, as a country. Wouldn't be possible. As of the direction of work, we as a business, we're always trying to be cautious, so that on the one hand we could see and behold the opportunity, on the other hand we could weigh the risks in, because the business is always about weighing in the position in this two-dimension coordinate system. If we speak about the problems, the issues, business should always be considered through two perspectives. The first one is investments, and we need to consider business as one of the participants of the investment process. The sphere which we can see here looks like, at the first sight, that it allows us to optimize investment profile of the projects. When we can see the opportunity of tax optimization and so on, yes, really, theoretically, it can decrease the price of the development the cost of the development according to the investment profile of the project. On the other hand, the business should be considered as a certain subject unity which is trying to create some value, to create something new, so to create an innovation of kind. And in this case, the problematics which we are facing, well, we can have a wish, we can have an idea, we can have the vision, but we may lack expertise or resources. If we speak about certain joint ventures, like spin-off ones, we need to understand that it's important for the businesses to understand that this solution can solve and add something new to the project. I am ready to become a partner if I understand if my partner can add anything, can complement something I lack. If we speak about the problem of private-public partnership with the science, what we are facing, mostly, honestly speaking, it's not of an issue for organization process, because we understand that in fact they can be solved. We can get to the consultants, we can get to the partners, we can find the way how we can achieve the outcome formally. More, it's an issue of this subject of interaction, of our cooperation. As of today, we are more interested to search for the subject of interaction abroad, because again, the participants already mentioned the issue of quality of the outcome of scientific activity. It is better there, abroad. But what can I see? what is possible there. The step which is offered today, in fact, is a step which makes us closer to the creation of certain ecosystems. The only thing I'd like to mention is that, and I've already said that for multiple times, that when we speak about an ecosystem, we don't need to get into this isolation trap. And we shouldn't be restricted by the creation of a cool ecosystem within Ukraine only. We need to understand that if we like to move on and create the value which complies with the today's level of progress, which was mentioned by the speakers above, we need to be the part of a global research network. And now let us pose a question for ourselves, adding to the offered changes. Do they really solve the issue of access of Ukrainian subjects, for instance, private-public partnership in the form of Science Park? Will it improve access to the developments and innovations, to the research? Do we simplify the way of the involvement in the cooperation? If we speak about tax aspects, if we take some trivial formal things, whether they took into account current foreign currency limitations, for instance, do I have the opportunity of working as a science park? Can I solve those issues with foreign currency payments and so on, knowing the limitations which exist now in the banking system? Then, as far as I understand, the issue is still open and relevant, whether we can involve in this joint venture the company which is non-resident, because for us it is incredibly important. As of today, if I am asked about that, it is cool for the business? Yes, it looks attractive because I can see the opportunity to optimize the cost of the development over the... but what's the investment of academia? Is it just the ticket to get some discounts? Sorry, it does not look sexy. But if this kind of a format allows me, with the use of the academic institution, to get one more partner, the academic institution from the United States of America, and we'll have the opportunity to create something together. For instance, I get access to additional expertise, then it is cool. So, concluding, I don't want to take much of time, as a direction, we support it as an approach. We consider it to be super cool. We try to find certain use in that. But as a proposal, we need to organize this process in the way so that it wouldn't be finalized just with a law draft or a law adoption. Because in any case, there will be certain discrepancies and points which we did not take into consideration. So if we are pursuing this way, let us listen to everyone, let us hear everyone, and still try to have several more iterations to make it finally perfect as an outcome, which will lead to the worthy Ukrainian research and development, not only in Ukraine, but at the international market as well. That would be really cool. It's a dream, in fact. Thank you, Dmitro. So please, the participants of the roundtable who represent the higher educational institutions and scientific institutions, please remember the question about the subject of interaction and the quality of our expertise. And the question goes to Anastas Boyko. Hello everyone, good day. As for the importance of the development of knowledge-intense business, many speakers mentioned the main points. But I would like to tell you about our perspective as the project of the digital transformation support. One of the main objectives, what we are pursuing, is the economic growth. Through the lens of economic growth, we consider the project of Science City, which we implement together with the partners from BRDO and together with the public authorities, of course. So developing as a follow-up on Timothy's idea about the importance of economy as it is. Before the war, we were considering economy as the way to provide the high level of life and welfare, the way to create the infrastructure, to cover the social needs, and so on. But now we all understand how important economy is in national security. And trivially, we just understand that national security is very expensive. We see how much money is spent for the armed forces, for the weaponry, and not all of the countries, and Ukraine before the war, could not afford itself to have the high level of national security. If we look at the countries which can do that, living under the conditions similar to ours, living in the adversary environment, having aggressive neighbors who are having the plans to be dangerous, those are countries like Israel or South Korea. In the presentation of Mr. Kurbatov, we could see which percentage of GDP is invested into R&D in these countries, 4 to 5%. That is limitless. It is, in fact, very far figure for us, knowing our percentage, as Mr. Minister mentioned. And we need to overcome this gap so that we could exist resiliently under these conditions. For that, we just earn. Trivially, we should earn to purchase Ukrainian analog of Patriot. We're using $300 million, or American Patriot for $1 billion. First, we need this analog of Patriot. So the question is, what economy is being created to have this $1 billion? We cannot create the raw material economy, which we used to have because of the right reasons. We don't have a big number of population. We have the country of population 30 plus million, not a billion. We've lost lots of industrial assets, we've lost access to certain natural resources, and we have the input conditions when we have certain human capital, we have certain resources, and the question which we are answering is how we can earn the maximum of money in GDP with human capital, how we can take a ton of natural resources and to have the maximum of outcome in GDP. So, looking at some formal examples, speaking about lithium, because Ukraine has lots of lithium. A ton of lithium has the price of $10,000. We can sell a ton of lithium for $10,000, or we can sell accumulators, lithium accumulators, creating $50,000. But lithium itself is easy to sell. It's a resource. There is the market, there is the price. Selling accumulators or batteries is harder, because then we'll compete with the US, Europe, China. So to create high-quality accumulators, we need innovations. So that we could create innovations, in order to create innovations, we need science. Statistical data and logics witness about that. So answering the question which economy should be, it can be only innovative. Can innovative economy exist without science? No, it cannot. There is not a chance. And it is confirmed by all of the well-developed economies, as science parks of the United Kingdom were mentioned already. And even if we take the example of the US, one science park, and they are multiple there. If we take Research Triangle Park, that is more than 300 companies, $3 billion of investments into R&D annually, looking just at one science park. If we look at China, there is the biggest science park there, which involves 1.5 million of people, 20,000 companies, dozens of scientific institutions. Those are enormous institutions and human capital resources working on solving this issue. So I totally agree with the previous speakers that the issue for the development of knowledge-intense business is the issue of our survival for the years and dozens of years, decades ahead of us. Thank you, Anastas. Let us now move to the issue which is already relevant about the obstacles which exist now on the way to the creation of PPP in the sphere of science and knowledge-intense business. Let me give the floor to Nazar Podolchak and Ludmila Kruzhanivska, who is online with us. Nazar, please, the floor goes to you first. Thank you so much. First of all, I thank BRDO for the organization of this event. and that we have the amendments to the law draft because it's incredibly important. Obstacles. Look, when we speak about the obstacles, legislative obstacles, which we used to work with on the science parks, we're doing that for the 4th year in a row, and they are already solved in this law draft. First of all, the rent. When we use the auction for rent, it's just impossible to involve any business at the usual Prozoro auction, especially when the business is investing money into R&D. This is the investment of the money and getting revenue. So this issue is solved in the law draft, and it's a big advantage. Moreover, it is offered to have a very nice idea to have the subcontractors for the rent. Why do we need subcontractors? Will there be any of the abuses of the process? When we create an UAV, a drone, we do some part on our own, some part is done by our partner. When we transport it from one city to another, those are huge economic, logistic, and other types of costs. And this issue is so important. It really needed to be solved, and thankfully it is solved here. Secondly, taxes. The majority, in majority of cases, it is solved, but as Ksenia nicely put, sole proprietors and science parks in one law is hard to imagine. We need to think how we can approach the legal status and agency of the sole proprietor and science park, at least looking at the taxes dimension. The creation was not impossible. The public organization cannot be the partner. So who is the main partner of the science park? The academic, the scientist who is coming with his or her idea and says, I need some help. Because in his or her lab, he's staying 24/7 and he or she needs help. And we tell him, no, wait, you should create a sole proprietor status and then you come to us. That is according to the older law. Now, in the new law, it is solved. The academic can come and become the partner of the science park and take some equipment to rent, and it can be solved. And organizational issues are solved as well. Will it ever work? Well, there is a high chance that it will. Out of the 5 parks which we have, definitely it will. But we have lots of issues which are still not solved. Look, where do we take it from, and do we have anything to transfer? As Timofey has put it, and Alexander did it, we have the situation when the state is controlling science. No, it's not true. It is controlled by the heads of organizations, rectors, deans, pro-deans, and so on. When they imagine that there will be some idea, some of the LLC, and even if they have 90% in the LLC, just imagine what it means. This person thinks that something is taken from him, right? Let me not say any obscene words. So it's not the way out. We need to think how we need to bring up this rector or dean and give some control into his hands, because maybe he or she is right. We need to create some monitoring system or to have some consolidated reporting, which would be the part of the reporting overall. And the formula which is offered by Denis, this is the right thing to do. Then he understands that nothing is taken from him. Then he understands that something will be as a gain. And once more point, do we have anything to transfer? Let us be sincere and frank. Not that much, not that much. And the Ministry of Education had a nice initiative to create a startup school, and science park, and a business incubator, accelerator. Well, in fact, they made a mess of it a bit, but still, we need that profile. If we don't move from the idea to the industrial park, which has high scale manufacturing, because the industrial park should be the kind of the source. We need to connect with them. The science park will never be the source. There are no chances. We need the high-scale manufacturing. The industrial parks should become, in fact, technological, and then we'll be able to earn in the production. And the last point, let me conclude. We need to bring up some culture. We can have wonderful laws, we can have tax incentives, we can have organizational issues, but we need to bring up culture. Because the whole ecosystem is growing only in the case when you're ready to share and to look straight into the eyes to each other, and not how it happens when the business is underestimating the academics and the academic is overestimating himself. I've done everything, I just need about $2 million to invest, but I'd like to have 90% of the invention. We need to look at the international, well-developed practices and bring up the culture according to this culture. Thank you, Nazar, for this problematic specifically mentioned. Now let me give the floor to Ludmila Kryzhanovska, who's connected online, the director of Prom Prelate Foundation. Ludmila, are you with us? Yes, sure. Do you hear me, colleagues? Yes, we do. Perfect. Thank you so much. Look, first and foremost, I wouldn't like to repeat the words in the contexts which were mentioned by my colleagues. Really, we are the ecosystem, the project which is located in Ivano-Frankivsk city. And in fact, what we see, looking at the peculiarities of cooperation between the universities and scientific environment, community and entrepreneurs, is the need, and the colleagues confirmed that partially, the need in some mediators, to understand that there is someone who knows the language of both stakeholders in this process and can explain the business, what approach can be used by the scientist to bring innovations and to make it useful for the business. And the same, the academic, the scientist needs to be explained how the business is working and what it aims for. As of today, honestly speaking, we see a very serious challenge whether we have the high-quality institutional capacity in the universities to understand the needs of the business and to have the understanding where they can interact, where they can be useful for each other. And also we have prejudices from business. They don't understand why they need science. But on the other hand, together with our partners, we are implementing the project which is supported by the European Commission, New Economy of Ivano-Frankivsk City. Within this project, I'd like to say that we have really nice cases of such cooperation. As of today, that is more of interaction not between businesses and universities, but businesses with separate scientists as representatives of universities. But we have a case when a lab or a university or a scientist is working to provide the materials, the fabrics for fashion industry to replace leather. We also have the example in ecosystem when the university is working together with an entrepreneur to create the inflammable fabric, to create a military uniform for the soldiers, which is also an important challenge today. And we don't have such fabric as of now. That is why I think, and it was already mentioned by our colleagues above, but this opportunity to understand the need and to understand what Timothy mentioned and the colleagues, what the scale is and how critically important is the innovation, both in the technological and engineering sector, but in other sectors as well. And the understanding whether this interaction and mutual understanding is important for all of the parties for the survival of the country. This is the first critically important point. Secondly is access to funding. Very often we see, and we've already mentioned it today, that funding by the state is definitely insufficient. And it seems to me that experience of science parks and universities can be useful for separate academics and scientists to attract some grants for their developments and to communicate with the businesses. So this service of the support of a human who is capable to create innovations so that we could attract investments and provide the infrastructure which could be helping in the promotion of innovations. That is critically important as well. And also I would like, and my colleagues already mentioned that partially above, that, and I hope that in the process of the development of the law draft it will be taken into consideration, because we have already existing and acting ecosystems, the players who can potentially have a very strong managerial and scientific base, and which are more flexible, I would say, than, for instance, some of the public educational institutions. I wouldn't like to put a blame on anyone, but still we understand that sometimes the public institutions are not that speedy and don't have that nice level of flexibility to introduce innovations, to test them, and to communicate with other stakeholders which provide this efficient cooperation creating innovations. And an important point, an infrastructural base. We have the experience in the universities of Ivano-Frankivsk city when the scientists who we were trying to support were forced to move abroad, Germany or United States, to conduct their researches there in the labs, because it was impossible here because of the infrastructure component. Or they needed to attract money because they were not able to attract the sufficient level of investments here. So obviously it is important that we could pay enough of attention to that now, as from our perspective, internally in the ecosystem, in lots of the branches of Ukrainian business, we have such a request or demand to create, to co-create, and to research more with the academics and scientists, as businesses already have this capacity. Thank you, Ludmila. Thank you. Now we are moving to the part where we'll discuss that with the universities and scientific academics, which incentives you are already using for the development of researchers and creating partnerships with businesses. This is the question to Ksenia Semenova and Mikhailo Tukalo. Ksenia, please. Good day. How they say, I would like to demonstrate decisive support. I'm joking. So, I thank BRDO that we have a real round table and we have the opportunity to sincerely discuss these problematics. Kyiv Aviation Institute considers itself as an entrepreneur's university. This is the idea which was promoted by our team long ago in the Ukrainian higher education, at which we get the opportunity to implement. What is the entrepreneur's university? This is the university which teaches the students to be innovative entrepreneurs. And since the first year, to know that they have the option to create their own product, their company, innovation, and develop their business on and on. This is the university which creates innovations, companies, spin-offs, which thus earning money as well. And this is the university. The management system is created according to the principles of corporate management. This is the university working as an enterprise, which is thinking about its costs and revenues, about the social impact which the university has on the country and the world. What do we do for the sake of that? We are the participants of the experiment on the role of supervisory boards. Our supervisory board appoints the head of the university and other two universities, participants of the program. The supervisory board takes strategic decisions on the university. We changed the organizational form. We are not the budget institution. You had it on the slide about universities, and it was written that the universities are budget institutions. But you ignored that we have the university, which is not the public budget institution. It is the state enterprise, but it's not enough as well, because I agree with Mr. Milovanov that we need to approach to private ownership, but public institutions in the Western world is not the same as we have budget institutions here. Non-profitable organizations is not the same as budget institutions. What else do we have? Out of Good Governance Fund, my great gratitude goes to them because we are creating the Science Park and we are participants of the project Seeds of Bravery. What do we do within it? We create an innovative ecosystem, an entrepreneurship course for the students, incubator, accelerator for the students' developments and the developments of our scientists. During the half of the year of the implementation of everything which was above mentioned, we noticed some of the issues in the legislation. Some of them are, in fact, cancelled by this law draft, but some of them are not. The representative of the business already mentioned that the expertise of the academics is not that interesting in comparison with the possible contacts with the experts abroad. According to this law, even if we have the valuable Ukrainian expertise, it would be still more profitable to buy it if you are a sole proprietor. And you can go to the teacher, you can pay with cash and get the knowledge as it is.
Meaning the value of the university in science parks adds value for businesses from this interaction can be just when everything is done very comprehensively. So apart from tax incentives, customs incentives, we need to think about infrastructure and in what way to invest into infrastructure, including into energy. At the aviation university, they've got aerial dynamic tube. Can I guarantee that I'm going to have light for the 5 hours during the day? No, I can't. Is there a single university in Ukraine which is independent and is not connected to the municipal grid? No, but we have malls in Kyiv which have got gas cogeneration units to be working 24/7 because their business depends on the presence of electricity. So, the same pertains to the infrastructure. Business is selecting whether to order antenna from me or from Ireland. It's going to be cheaper if they order it from me, but I can, in theory, actually, by the way, we've got great expertise in this area, but I can produce it not as fast as in Ireland. And in Ireland, they can test the antenna because in neither university in Ukraine, we've got the testing chamber. So infrastructure matters, and we need to speak about this continuously. And it doesn't mean that the universities just need more and more money for whoever knows what. No, without infrastructure, we can't be operational. It's not possible, and up-to-date science cannot exist in vacuum without money. Thirdly, creating the draft law, we need to think about its enforcement, about bylaws. What else needs to be cleaned up in the legislation? We face several things which are being ignored at the universities, for example, in the law on managing the state property. Funds institutions, it is mentioned that the public institutions can be founders if their share would be less than 50%. You know, if you want to have spin-off in Ukraine, if you want venture funds to be investing into these funds, if you want big companies to be buying the spin-offs, then the share of the university in this spin-off cannot be more than 10%. That's nonsense if more than 10% shares belongs to the university. There is this limitation. Everybody ignores that. But if I would like to arrange a science park with an international company, the lawyers of that international companies would tell us no. It contradicts the legislation. There are restrictions for scientific institutions for alienation of the intellectual property. But what if for example, some scientific institution has got something interesting and Google wants to buy it, then we might have a problem as well. For example, that's the Academy of Science of Ukraine, right? But the legislation of Ukraine limits the capacity of merging. And what Mr. Bornyakov was saying today is important, but still we have to do a lot because the majority of global investment funds at some moment in time will ask you to register your company in Estonia. Or somewhere else in Europe or USA. Venture funds do not invest into companies registered in Ukraine, and there's a range of reasons why it's happening. So the legal limitations, but also the judiciary, the reforms which allegedly do not pertain the innovations area, are actually influencing all these processes. We need to speak about it. Otherwise, when we train students and tell to students that you can be innovative entrepreneurs, you can have your startup. No, we have to be frank. We have to say you need to register it in Estonia rather than in Ukraine. And we need to work for this to be happening in Ukraine. And for sure, the aviation university is providing their proposals to amendments of the legislation. And a lot of the restrictions will be lifted, which is great. For sure, we would like to have more preferential conditions. But so far, we hear the story when they say, let us send the money to your individual enterprise, and right now in a short-term perspective it might be beneficial for the business, but not in a long-term perspective. Thank you, Mr. Ksenia. Mr. Mihailo. Hello, thank you for the invitation. To start with, as you were inviting me, the format was mentioned in a different way. They told me that we are going to discuss all types of parks, including technological parks and centers of excellency, etc. But still, thank you for discussing all this draft laws. Technological parks need to be considered as well. The speakers were confusing the science parks and technological parks, and we don't have a single science park according to those speakers. Okay, so I really want, as a representative of a research institution, to mention a few anchor points. In the first place, Mr. Milovanov mentioned correctly that now we live in times of war and we need to think about protection of the country, about robotics, about artificial intelligence, but we do not need to forget about people, about human capital. And the AI cannot replace the human capital, at least in terms of management and in terms of developing some great innovative ideas. And we need to think about health of our people, of our defenders who find themselves in trenches. And that's important because, again, as we already saw in the case of pandemics, our foreign colleagues won't help us with that. We need to work on our own scientific potential in this regard, in terms of training human resources and in terms of R&D potential as regards personified, individualized medicine, etc. And we need to produce our own medicines, medicinal products. So let's not forget about this area, because if to be frank, we need to rank it first and speak about it in the first place, because if we don't have healthy defenders, robots won't help. That's comment number one I would like to extend here. And there are certain important consequences arising here. As far as we don't have venture capital, and I don't know when we are going to have it, of paramount importance would be the state support. You saw in Norway, even our business R&D are funded by the state by 80%, 80. And we are not very hopeful that the state would be granting us such support, but at least creating or supporting several parks. That's possible. Mr. Dmitro Derkach, we were communicating a lot with him, and he covered the business opinion. Business is not really eager to be involved in creation of these parks, regardless of all the carrots which are mentioned here, unlike the sticks. So for business, it's important to have an innovation which they can sell abroad. And in order to have the state support, or when we have state support, only then we can avoid this problem. Well, business is interested to have human resources, including from research institutions and academia. By the way, with Urea Farm, we already have the common PhD and some joint projects. So yeah, we need to start small and grow big. But what's important to mention here would be that managers are not being born as managers, right? We need to train people to become full-fledged managers, and this needs to be supported by the state, because as far as I know, we don't have a lot of university departments which are preparing future managers. And good business person would not achieve great results without a great manager. Well, the management department was created by these two well-developed Ukrainian universities, but somehow it's still not at the best level. What other challenges do we have as the representatives of science in order to cooperate with business? Just to have an idea is not enough. Not a single business person would buy out your idea if you don't have a patent, and in the best case scenario, this patent shall be an international one. But we have a serious problem with even licensing, forget patenting. And if, again, to come back to what was mentioned, the venture capital won't be efficient if the patent is not interesting for business. Nobody will give you a penny. Only if you sell it to business, business would create their business plans, and then the foreign investors can really give you something. So what kind of problem with patents we've got? Mr. Mihailo, I'm sorry, closer to the science parks topic. Yeah, but that's a serious issue. If we don't sell patents, and we don't, because that's the real estate law, and yeah, we need to do something with this. And speaking about funding, abandoning the topic of property law. Well, if we could involve non-residents from abroad to our parks, this would be a significant step forward, because at the university we have two foreign residents who would like to work with us, but we don't have a legitimate way to involve them. I don't know, maybe we can somehow put it in the legal framework, in the legislation, that it's okay to involve international residents in a way to the science parks. Well, this would be it. I wanted to be brief. Well, there are plenty of other issues I would be eager to discuss, but again, human capital, let's not forget about it, and foreign investments would never come if we don't have business buying licenses and patents. You know, venture capitals do not recognize the licenses. No, the patent shall be there. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Mihailo. And I would like to draw your attention to the issue of patenting issues and interaction with industrial parks raised by Mr. Nazar. Will be discussed additionally with the Ministry of Economy of Ukraine. They were invited to this very event, and we'll continue cooperating with them. Thank you so much. And the next question, actually, about We've discussed, by the way, plenty of mechanisms, tools in the context of Science City. What do you think? The mentioned stimuli can be efficient? Will they work? And what we still lack in this concept? Ms. Olha, the floor is yours, and Mr. Valentin to follow.
Thank you so much. I think that it's hard to surprise, to amaze you in the end of the discussion. I would just say that we'll have lunch soon, so I will try not to take too much time, but to be close to the subject. I'd like to thank Denis for the leadership in this issue, because we've communicated a long time ago that we need deregulation for the scientists to incentivize scientific development as it is. But when I hear the point that we need to combine business and science, I have a kind of misunderstanding, because I don't remember in the forced alliances that someone can be combined by force. We are all conscious that bigger business corporations have their own R&D centers. They have their own science already, and mostly they don't need that much us, the science which we are talking today about. So if we speak about the scientists from the state point of view, we are interested in the way so that they could stop. Well, I do apologize, I don't want to offend anyone, but still very often it looks like our science is the people who are at the margin, who are committed to their course, who are have their vocation, not because they can earn. But how can science be attractive for investments? This is the key issue which should be posed when we consider science parks as a solution. As it should be a solution, we need to understand for whom. If we say that we'd like to give the opportunity for the scientists to be competitive, we've heard a lot today that the scientists are creating inventions, they're researching something. And the biggest issue is the management issue. How to help science become commercialized. If we give the function of management to someone else, and these services can be provided in the science parks, then they can go on. So this is the question of the mindset, the question how this or that person is thinking. And even in business, formally speaking, those who are selling are not creating. Those are different types of processes, and they are also dividing their activity into different types as it is. The second point I'd like to mention is the question what business we are speaking about if we say that it has to be knowledge intense. Because let me repeat again, the bigger business corporations have their R&D centers already. If we speak about the startup sector, those who just like to start up anything, for them undoubtedly this idea of combination of science cities with dear city could be really relevant, because deregulation, it's not a secret that it's really can incentivize the development of economy in spite of the fact that sometimes our state can have a different opinion. And a risk factor is that there can be hard discussions with the MPs. And it seems to me that this next step, which needs to be taken by the ministries, needs what was mentioned by Milovanov above, to have a certain economic forecast of potential revenue in the budget, looking at the activity of science parks, to explain to them that tax deduction, even if we don't get something during a certain period of time, but will reveal lots of things. What really creates the budget, looking at the revenues of acting 5 science parks, which were mentioned out of all the registered ones. Maybe those losses won't be that substantial in comparison with potential revenues which may take place. And finally, to conclude, it seems to me that this activity, in the good sense, can work when we understand, first of all, where the request goes from, who the customer is. When we understand that there is the human and material technical potential, as Ksenia mentioned above, it is important to have the opportunity to have the full cycle, to finalize the testing process, to move to better versions, production, manufacturing, and so on. If we have conditions for the implementation and growth, and when you understand who gets the profit in this story. Because as for me, the biggest issue is the issue of trust. The colleagues already mentioned that there can be issues of patents. I don't want to delve deeper into the sometimes crazy stories when the academics or scientists are hiding their inventions because they are afraid that they will be deprived of their achievements. So this is the question of trust and the win-win game. When everybody has to win and to get benefits, all of the participants of the process should gain. This is the most important thing, when we have honest and comprehensible rules of the game, when the business says how much it wants to gain, what the scientist will have, and how the state wins, especially if it has its own share in this story. And it's okay as well. We mentioned Israel before, when they as a state have their own share in some of the technological developments. So our formally saying business model can be profitable to us, but definitely we need to develop it, to mention it, and to go along this way. Thank you. Thank you, Olga. And I give the floor to Valentin. Thank you for the opportunity to give a speech here. So starting the responding whether the amendments to the law will work, I would like to delve deeper into the history, as I'm the representative of the Institute of Single Crystals. Since 2000 to 2008, we were working with the Technological Park Institute of Single Crystals. And the amendments in the legislation offered for the science parks were already working within technological parks, including the Technological Park of the Institute of Single Crystals. Who used to be the partner? Who implemented the projects in the Technological Park of the Institute? Antonov Factory, Pharmac, Interhim, and others. And according to all of these projects, we have the aircrafts, we have pharmaceuticals, and so on. But what our institute gained, knowing that we were involved in the activity of such technological park? First and foremost, we gained an incredible push for the development, because we used to have the opportunity to acquire new equipment, to create new labs, to pay additional money to bonuses to our employees, thanks to the activity of the technological park. Secondly, and what's very important, that it was mentioned by Mr. Durkac above, I fully support that, we know how to communicate with business now. The scientists, it's very hard for the scientists to communicate with the businesses, and it is mutual to find common grounds, because when the business comes and says, we need this innovation for our needs, and the scientist may say, what you need is the idea of yesterday. I have a different idea. Buy it. And your idea will be put aside. And that's it. This is the end of the conversation between businesses and scientists. And another issue which exists between the businesses and scientists, that the scientists don't understand the terms of reference and the timeline. When they come, they say, well, you need it in a year. But in a year, they just begin the thinking process, because this idea is interesting, and we started the research process. This is also the issue. The activity within the technological park allowed us to understand how to communicate with businesses. And what it led to? It led to the situation that as of today, our Institute of Single Crystals, even under the conditions of war, because we are located in Kharkiv city, per each hryvnia of budget funding, we earn 1.7 hryvnia with the help of direct contracts of extra budgetary revenues. So it allows us, as of today, to have the most contemporary equipment, to pay for bonuses for our employees, and so on. Now, coming back to this law draft. We were really attentively and closely looking into it, and we'd like to thank the people who developed it, because really they were trying to solve lots of the issues. The law on science parks was adopted in 2009, and since 2009 till now, it never worked. Whether it works after they adopt the amendments to this law, well, I would say it will. though you mentioned properly, you cannot force businesses and science work together. You still need some other additional incentives so that this partnership really worked. Of course, we have certain remarks. We listed them. I will send it to the proper email in the proper format, but now I'd like to delve deeper into some of the points. There were several reasons why technological parks were closed. They were not closed. They were deprived of all of the discounts or incentives. One of the reasons was the corruption component in the activity of technological parks. So here, in the legislation which is offered, we also have such an interesting idea. Look, we have a very specific mentioning who the founders of the science park are, which requirements they face, who they report to, and so on. And there are partners of science parks, some from the perspective of the preferences and so on. Both partners and founders have the same rights, but everything, what's written about the partners, that they are the economic entities who awarded a contract on partnership with the science park. This contract shouldn't be within the scientific project even. It can be any contract. It's not written here that the partner of the science park should comply with the requirements of the founders. Looking at what I see, they can have also additional products issued. So believe me, definitely, this gap should be considered by the lawyers. We need to consider whether it can be used improperly, so that technological parks could be the gate for some business structures who would like to avoid taxation and customs requirements of Ukraine. Evade them. So some of the details hide the issues. There are multiple here. Like a detail. The projects of scientific park which need some equipment, we need to show the amount of equipment, components and materials. In the beginning of the project, we need to know which materials we will need and which components and spare parts will be needed. But if we need different ones later, that's it. We cannot change anything according to this law. So those details conceal the devil. So concluding, I'd like to agree, Mikhailo. Look, we don't only have science parks now. Since 2015, as we have the law on scientific and scientific technical activity, which I dealt with because I was included in the working group developing this law, startups and spin-offs are not that numerous. According to the, they are not existent. We don't at least have active ones. Why? And again, I'd like to drive your attention to the quote. The property rights for the intellectual rights are preserved by the state educational institution, academy or university. And that's it. Why do you create a startup? A startup is created to develop some technology, material, and to sell it later. So this phrase totally closes the way to create a startup for the sake of its main idea. And as we are trying to get rid of this phrase from the law for 10 years, we fail so far. I would like to say that this quote, I remember this discussion. It was just taken from nowhere. Why should we deprive ourselves of the rights? And then it was written down like that. But it does not allow us to work efficiently, creating innovative structures in Ukraine. And the last point I'd like to say now, we heard this phrase for multiple times today, that according to the law, we need the salary of appropriate level for the scientist, that is 35,000 for junior scientific employee, and it was mentioned that Ukraine cannot afford itself such salaries. Let me tell you the example from Ukraine, which you heard for multiple times, but still. 15,000 of prosecutors exist in Ukraine with an average salary of 67,000 hryvnia, and 20,000 academics with degrees with a salary of 12 to 15,000. That's about priorities and innovative development of our country. Thank you. Thank you, Valentin. Thank you that you were thoroughly working on the law draft, and thank you for the details, which are not details, in fact. Those are important clarifications. We are waiting for your proposals. We know that you've got more of them. So, to conclude, to make the conclusion of the work of the roundtable and to speak about which incentive we have, what we add, and maybe what we so far missed, I give back the floor to Timothy and Denis. And then we move to the Q&A session and for the online participants. Timothy, please. Thank you. I think what's important is that this law is adopted. This is the critical step forward. It's highly desirable not to make it too sterile with the amendments. And we need to repel the attack that we may lose 2 million hryvnia of taxes. And that is why we won't have sciences. Let's not take risks. It will be the task of the state to be conservative. It is acceptable. The whole system is created in the way to have this struggle of innovations and conservatism. But we need to emphasize specifically that the future of Ukraine, in an existential issue of existence of Ukraine, depends on mostly whether the clever people can stay here, work here, cooperate here, including the science sphere, for the businesses, for the army. And it seems to me this discussion is important. It is really serious. We have a real issue, and it is the challenge. If we don't have science, we don't have Ukraine. And everybody has this kind of an attitude of ridiculing it. We lived somehow for 30 years without science. Yes, we did. And now people are dying every day. And if we had science, we would have robots. And so the Russians wouldn't even come here. And this is not the only point, but it's an important point, of course. So we need to emphasize on that, as I'm afraid that this law draft will be stuck in those conversations about VAT, synchronization with the EU, and details whether we need to declare all the equipment, the list of the equipment at the customs office. Then it will be boring and rotten dump, and not a single innovation will emerge in this dump. So we need to get rid of this dump. I thank the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Digital Transformation for the leadership in this process, and thank you everyone for the support. Thank you, Timothy, for the support as well. Please, Denis, the floor is yours. Thank you, Timothy. And in fact, I thank everyone for this discussion. We don't end it. This is just the break, because we have to work on this law draft a lot, as we've made this event on purpose in the middle of the period of public discussion, to initiate this discussion, to drive your attention and the attention of the society to this issue and how we're trying to solve it. Obviously, it did not emerge just like that. We were working for a long time on the analysis of the existing issues. It is very nice to hear that the majority of them were already solved by this law draft. And also I am grateful for the remarks and mentioning of the issues which still need to be solved. I've noted down a lot. Let me comment on that. But I'd like to say about the main idea of the parks, which was never mentioned before. In fact, this is the structure which has to change the paradigm of the academics' thinking. It's not just for the forceful attraction and combination of scientists under one structure. It will never work, it's obvious. But the business, both Ukrainian and foreign, faces issues. And those issues need to be solved. There should be structures which will be able to delegate these problematics to the scientist, to create the conditions which legal mechanism can solve the issue for the business and the academic when the academic has the certain type of knowledge. And I'm grateful to Valentin, who said properly, technological parks once changed the model of the development of Institute of Single Crystals. The science park has to shift the paradigm of thinking of the majority of universities and educational and scientific institutions. The scientist has to face the mission or the task. This task was never appointed by the state. The businesses didn't always have the opportunity to achieve such level. By the way, about the state, this year we had the changes in the mechanism of state commission for scientific technical products. First of all, it's for the first time it's done from top to bottom. 10 key ministries shaped the problematics. 3 or 5, not 11 proposals were given to the researchers. It tells us that if the academia faces the task, they can accomplish it. So we need to shift this paradigm, and that is why we need this science park as well. Let me give you the feedback for certain questions I heard. We don't have Alexander, he had to leave urgently, but he said that it is desirable that the whole science has become private. I think it's impossible. The world in the world, the science is not that interesting for the businesses. Those are huge investments, long periods of time, huge risks, so the state should play the key role. I agree with Ksenia, because she said that this role comprises of the opportunity of funding of infrastructure, researchers' expensive equipment, which businesses are not always ready to acquire. The state should pay their role. And the efficiencies, energy efficiency, it's super important knowing the current state of the energy system and what will be its future. And the most important is what's the cost of the energy, even if it's continuous, without any gaps. It is not the market price. Definitely it will increase when we integrate, so the issue of energy efficiency for the university is super important. That is why, even this year, we've launched a huge project on the creation of solar power plants at the first 19 objects. We will go on with this project, and I think that this is one of the vectors for development. And that is why we have lots of comic ideas. How come in science you measure kilowatt? How do you measure green technologies? That is why we are measuring them, because if we don't shift the thinking paradigm for the university management and academic institutions, that it's important through the methodology and the tools of methodology, we will never then use this expensive equipment, even if we have it. The quality of scientific outcome, yes, that is an important issue. I've already mentioned it. And by the way, it's connected with the mechanisms of implementation later, the sales of patents and so on. Obviously, it needs changes. Not only because of this norm, but we understand that we are still afraid that someone can steal something. And sometimes we achieve the situation that we have nothing to sell, as we are afraid of being stolen. I thank you for this offer. Obviously, we'll change it, because the key point is still the quality and the outcome. Whether we can involve international companies as partners of the park, well, it is not prohibited now, but if you think that it needs to be more obvious what can be done, we are ready to jot that down. There is no issue about that. Nazar was speaking about many created parks, so that it would be nice to create and activate the work of technological industrial parks. I think we will not succeed in that. We first need to provide the resuscitation of academic institutions, and then there will be upscaling. This is the obvious outcome. Whether the state enterprise, which is a non-profitable enterprise, be involved? Yes, it can. We support this reform, and I personally support it. We need to change the management process. We need to change the forms of the most efficient budget institutions, of course it can be done, and it is found in the law draft. I thank you so much for the point mentioned by Valentin that they involve almost 2 times more money from the international partners than the state is giving to them. This is also the way out. It's not only about the Institute of Single Crystals. Here in the audience we have many managers of the institutions and scientific managers who are also actively dealing with this work of involvement and attraction of extra budgetary money, because the budget of the country, of the state, is limited, but science is important. So all of us together need it. Why do we have such representation? As I said, we have here almost all of the ministries. The Parliament, unfortunately, has the session day, but still they are involved in the process. All the stakeholders, the businesses. We just did not invite the prosecutors, that's true. But it is important that we should have this work together. It's not the work only for the Ministry of Education. It's not the outcome for the Ministry of Education. This is the outcome of the rebuilding of the country's economy to become an innovative country and to have the opportunity to increase the budget funding at least to the percentage which was mentioned by the Ministry. Thank you. Thank you, Denis. Thank you, all of the participants of the round table. Now let us move to the Q&A session from the audience. We have the first question already. We need the mic for that. And please tell instantly who you're asking the question. Good day. Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia Kabyanik, Odessa National Academic University, Odessa Center of Transfer of Knowledge and Technologies. Thank you so much that you initiated this meeting and raised this question. And we, as the Center of Transfer, are dealing not only with transfer, but this kind of education activity, because the academics need to be taught that they need to work for the market and develop the projects which are interesting for the market. I already have even the phrase from the Soviet classical movie that I want the same but more beautiful. So it's already being implemented. When you say that there is nothing to sell, I would say that we have something to sell, because we have lots of developments which can be sold, but we need tools for that. And Science Park is the tool which, as we can see, can solve this issue. Because how can the university sell? Yes, we are working according to the contracts, but you know, those sole proprietors, we are fed up with them, you know. The university is not interested in that. And by the way, this education activity which we were obliged and forced to accomplish, if you initiate the creation of the Science Park, instantly prepare and teach the employees of the science parks who will work there. We don't have the proper training. We even launched the schools of innovative managers and innovative brokers, and we involved the people from all over the country. We trained them, we told what we know, and we taught them how to work. Because the Center of Transfer has been created, but who will work there? So the teachers got additional workload. And you see, when you say scientists, in the universities we don't have scientists, if you remember. We have this scientific pedagogues. So you still need to work at the 6 classes or sessions, and then you need to be creative for the sake of science. Well, this is the painful moment for us. So the experts have to be trained. And the question is, who will do that instantly? You need to think in advance. Next point, looking at the indicators you were mentioning. They are more negative, right? We, as the Center of Transfer, are conducting lots of works, but we don't know how to document the work and how to show that it has been conducted. We already know something about transfer, but we need to find out the commercialization, how to earn money. We still don't know that, and we really hope, and this is the question. Please, I really heard a very wonderful point before. I really agree with that. But who can directly help us create a science park? Because we have the economic education. First, we calculate how we can earn, how we can achieve some revenues. After we calculate it, we understand what we cannot earn. Then we go to our colleagues who has science parks already, and we asked them, you have science parks. You know how to do that. What would you recommend? What do you think their recommendations were? Don't create a science park. Every single person said, don't get into that. Don't create a science park. So we want it. We know that it can be done. But please, and this is the question, Oksana, maybe it's to you. You just tell me who I should get to. Who is the person or a department who will be a curator of the creation of science parks so that they could be that cool as you told us about? Because so far we can see that there is no sense in that. Either a person or an institution which can help us, because we'd like to create a science park and we'd like to earn a lot. Thank you.
In the first place, let me give the floor to Mr. Denis. Yeah, I'll try answering. So, that's right, you were not creating it because there are 40 of those and they are not operational. It makes no sense, and we started with that. This draft law was created in order to create the mechanisms for the science parks and whom to resort to. Actually, there were important remarks made and I didn't respond to those. It's important to pass a draft law, turning it into the piece of legislation, but then it's important to enforce it. And obviously, we have an answer here. We believe, as with Dear City, having their own office which accompanies the activities of this mechanism. The same here with the Science City. We are going to create a similar mechanism. Right now, you can resort to the Directorate of Innovations and liaison with the real sector of economy that was well created. Ksenia is its director. We actually support all these processes from the viewpoint administration and technically, but to begin with, it's important to introduce amendments to 10 pieces of legislation and 2 codes. Then it will be operational. Thank you. Any further questions? At first, the front row, if it's possible.
Доброго дня, вітаю, шановна президія.
Dear colleagues, dear Presidium, friends, partners, I'm a rector of Zaporizhia Polytechnical University and I represent a public higher educational institution which is being funded by the state. But actually today we all feel this critical situation, the brain drain, losing human capital, and technical universities are rearranging and retailoring their strategies in order to diversify their resources and get more proceeds thanks to the scientific activity, thanks to commercialization of R&D. And here we have to change the philosophy of our scientific pedagogues, because a person of science shall be earning money in the laboratory and then go back to deliver the lectures to students. And actually, that's what we are trying to arrange now, and we see the first results. We have the outcomes of scientific research which is being funded thanks to the contracts signed commercially, and we speak about maybe even 10% out of the whole scope of the state funding. And actually, the activity of the science parks allows us expanding our capacities, opportunities, and polytechnical universities of our countries have got range of preferences because they deal with robotic sciences, they deal with mechanics, engineering. Speaking about development of, for example, magnesium alloys, I don't know whether I can speak about it today. Only Mikhailo Fedorov knows about it, and that's it. But we are preparing our proposals to this very draft law as regards leasing the real estate. It would be great to add to the law also leasing of the equipment which is located in this premises. So yeah, we are moving forward, and we want the universities to be earning their own money, not to be dependent on the state. But the state money, the state funding shall be used more efficiently and effectively. And we were communicating with Mr. Denis about this calculation of the cost based on certain formula. And again, in 1146 order, we shall introduce the coefficients that will allow streaming more money to those universities which cooperate with the international institutions to actually promote such cooperation. And we need to regulate it all, and we need to actually increase the efficiency of using the budget money. Question to Denis Igorovich, whether it's going to be taken into account in this draft law and whether the order 1146 will be amended. Thank you. I believe it's all taken into account. We have two formula. The first one would be funding on science, and the second one funding of the educational activities of the universities. Within both formula, we would have the indicator of the scope of funding of the parks and proportionally the contribution into the statutory capital. It will stimulate the leadership of the universities in their understanding that that's their own, to take the ownership of the science parks. Also, let me add that I mentioned this a little bit about the demographics. So now, as a country, we can't be hopeful that we'll have a lot of students in the future. Meaning, one of the ways to preserve the university is really to rearrange the activities. Budget of the Harvard allocates 30% of its budget to the R&D, and their budget is more than $1 billion. So our goal is to turn scientific pedagogue into a person who would be involved in R&D. Not forgetting about transfer of knowledge, because that's important for the sustainable development of the future generations to come. Thank you. Yeah, please, other questions? Hello? Lyudmila Lisova, Horizon office in Ukraine. I would like to remind you about this resource of getting funding for science parks, including as European grants. And the Horizon Europe program is one of the biggest opportunities of grant support in Ukraine. Let me remind you that the grants are actually implemented by consortia and actually higher educational institutions, science parks, small and medium enterprises, civil society organizations can be part of this consortia. Meaning this is the platform which brings together all the stakeholders, and also they can get the European funding beyond the budget of Ukraine. And additionally, I would like to mention, because it was mentioned, who is going to be employed in the science parks. I believe we can involve those Ukrainian scientists who, due to war, left Ukraine, and those who are still willing to come back. They've got some experience, they have some, they met people, right? And they can be working in science parks, they can be transferring experience, getting grants, and develop their career in Ukraine. Thank you for this interesting proposal. If we have, namely, questions, 2 more questions from the room, and then yet one more from online, and that would be it. Hello. I'm Nadia, and I'm a representative of both sides. On one hand, I represent Biopharma School, and on the other hand, I'm an employee of the medical university. And the first question, the draft law says that the science park cannot exist for more than 7 years. So my question, how do you see this? How much time does it take to create a science park for it to be creating innovative technologies? That's the first question. Who can answer? I can take this one. Well, actually, science... well, it doesn't say so. The draft law doesn't say so. That's the project for the 7 years. Maybe you looked at the leasing. No, it says, I can read it aloud, that since the moment of the state registration... No, that's the state registration of the project. But the science park would be a separate structure. It says joins the company, etc. That's a typical enterprise, and it can... Okay, how long will it take to create it, for it to be operational? What do you think? For people who will start? Well, that's the second question. You are kind of mixing it all into one pot. No, you're offering business to lease property. Have you visited educational institutions? Well, I worked there quite successfully. Oh, no, question. Have you recently visited, business wants to lease equipment and real estate? Business will change it all because innovative technologies business wants to see there, especially in terms of biotechnologies, are not there at the higher educational institutions and research institutions. We are working on that, and we are working in order to develop this situation when students would be creating some technological products. We are doing it free of charge. Now, for students, just not to be losing interest in science in Ukraine. Something similar is here. People shall work here. This requires minimum a year to launch this park, because if you face the issue, how much time it takes for the equipment to come to Ukraine, for the reagents to come to Ukraine, and then the repair shall be done to create all the appropriate conditions for this equipment to be operational. You have to start small. And second of all, who is going to work at the science park? So we are procuring equipment, we brought it, and then we raise the issue of training. Even the coolest scientists do not know how to work with this cutting-edge equipment, because these are different pieces of equipment, the software is different, and this is yet another component we need to take into account. The draft law is cool, but the very simple things are not taken into account. And you are not right that business is not interested in science. No, we are very interested. We are waiting for the startups to show up. And if they are relevant, then business is ready to invest. So I wish all of us to be developing, because business is interested. As biopharma, I promise 100% we are interested. If I may comment a little bit, well, at first I thought you were against. But then it became clear that you are a supporter, and you are here, it's interesting for you, and we invited companies that work with science, because this is very important, not for this company so far, but for companies as well, but for retailoring the minds, right, of the representatives of science and academia. 7 years, that's not existence of the science park. That's the start of the project. If you believe there are some extensive projects, like, I don't know, creating of a drone of the collider, right? Yeah. For this collider, we need 15 years. But a lot of proposals were mentioned, like let's have it better than FOPs. But how to do that? It all depends on us, on our community, in what way we can persuade the internal stakeholders, Ministry of Finance, and again, all the international funding institutions. If we can substantiate not 7 years, but 15, yeah, great. We are supportive of this idea. Thank you. And we have yet another question. Greeting, colleagues. Dnipro Polytechnical University. I, as the head of the Regional Innovation Hub, listened to the comments, and I agree that this must be done. I really loved the idea about where to move forward from the science park, industrial park, right? Let's scale up. And the next question is relevant. Let us imagine that this is an ideal condition. We succeeded. We have commercialization stage. University is interested to get the return on investment. I have a question. What would be the mechanism of IP to IPO? Return on investment of the university, the money they've invested into creating the innovative activities. So we created the ideal conditions. We have the startup, we registered it, the mechanism is working, everybody is a startupper, the scientists, the students, they go to international market. And in what way the university will get this investment back? So, obviously, it will. The law says that the proceeds would be distributed proportionally to the contribution into the startup capital. You will get your return on investment, or you would like to also have your hand on the revenue of the business. No microphone used. Speaking of, no, have a look. No microphone. Sorry, you're not using the microphone. Okay, so before this, the colleagues were mentioning about management, about being interested. The joint stock company is being created, connecting science and business, right? We've created the startup, we have a certain share, as Ksenia was mentioning, preferably to 10%. But how do we get return on investment? I speak about university here. 10% is yours. This is limited liability company, right? No microphone. This is a limited liability company. No microphone. Get registered as a state enterprise could be a proposal. So, let us not go too deep into this topic. If you see a problem with return on investment, well, that's the property of the university, right? If that's leasing, if that's intellectual property, then mention it as a proposal. If that's revenue, then Ksenia is mentioning properly, as I was mentioning. You will have the contribution into the startup capital. It's not 50% in the law, but 10%, by the way. It's better. Hello, everyone. Alexander Beresko, Lviv Polytechnical University. Very inspiring speeches today. Thank you, Mr. Denis. Thank you, everybody who worked on it. I understand what it means to change the rules in the country and a world outlook issue, mentality issue. In the recent years, I was communicating a lot with the European Commission, with the EU, and with the stakeholders. Commercialization of science is great. That's great that we are actually trying to pursue it. A lot of you was reading the Maria Draghi report and the inability of the EU to achieve such successes as in China and US is something bad, right? And to achieve this knowledge intensity of GDP. But what this percents go to funding of academic freedom. And from the viewpoint of mentality and world outlook, there is nothing bad in commercialization of the science. Several times today you were mentioning that business has to dictate to the science what to do. So my world outlook question, it's better to discuss it now. Aren't we trying to limit the academic freedom here? Thank you. A very relevant issue. In one of my remarks, I mentioned that it's not always that business can fund science, and business cannot fund all the types of science, just fundamental research, right? And only state can pay attention to it very comprehensively, and the percentage we see, for example, in Germany, 60% would be business and 40% would be state. So this 40% from the state would be about academic freedom you are mentioning. And by the way, we have developed the draft law about priority areas of science, and we are abandoning the principle that we need to stick to priorities. So the academic freedom is vital, and we don't need to find ourselves within these limits when the day after tomorrow we cannot have the solution we needed to think about today. Well, the thing is that I support what was mentioned by Mr. Denis, but as I was saying about the problem of communicating business and science, sure, I mentioned just one side of this problem. The other side of the problem would be that Ukrainian business, by 80% or more, is not ready to communicate with the Ukrainian scientists and with scientists in general. And we were speaking about this a lot. So we need to understand in what way scientists shall talk to business, in what business shall perceive the R&D. Something they think they don't need today, but they might need tomorrow. Needed tomorrow. So, a very simple example. At the very beginning of 2005, we were running around visiting pharmaceutical companies, asking them to have energy-efficient technologies. They were saying, oh, why do we need that? Back then, we had very cheap electricity. They didn't need that. But then the prices started growing up, and they said, oh, yeah, let us introduce something like this. But those who were offering them were already not working in that area. So business is not ready to cooperate with Ukrainian men of science. Mr. Roman. Mr. Valentin, the only thing I can tell you as regards energy-efficient technologies, not everybody is dead who were offering those solutions back then. Very important initiative. I'm Roman Zinchenko, and I'm the head of the incubator. We are an implementing partner of 2 grant programs in Ukraine, focused on clean and climate-friendly technologies. EBRD and EU is funding us, and Global Contact Innovation Program. I have one question. As a customer, I've got this question. One of the programs we are managing supported 56 SMEs. You can see it international innovative arenas, and part of these businesses had experience of interacting with the research institutes as with service providers. They were ordering the service. If to speak about the offered mechanics, the key question would be, in what way the Science City ecosystem will solve one huge challenge we are facing? We don't have a representative sampling, but we have, for example, worked with certain research institutions. In what Science City will deprive us of this handbrake? Because the huge challenge we're facing would be speed of implementation of the projects. In what way can we ensure the dynamics in Science City? And we'll be glad to recommend the ecosystem to the global business who knows how to talk to scientists. So we'll do their best to understand how to talk to scientists. Thank you so much for this question. Speaking about the handbrake here, I was mentioning this in my presentation, and there are several factors. We speak in general about capacity of the university management to administer these processes or management of the research institutes. We have certain leaders here, but for sure not all the universities can do that. That's the issue of procurement, of issue of getting the reagents, the materials in order to start the research as soon as possible, and again getting the money in a timely manner, because the Treasury Office was mentioned already. All these things are there integrated in the changes brought by Science City. The Science Park would be a subject which wants to implement projects of business. Actually, the university is dealing both with science and with training of students, but the Science Park would be implementing projects and will be speedily implementing these projects. We treat it seriously. We understand that business need to have the solutions for yesterday, not even for tomorrow. So we don't have too much time to sign all these agreements, to do the procurement, etc. So if you see some additional problem which is not described, which is not regulated by the draft law, we still have the discussions. We are open and we'll take that into account. Thank you. And we have yet another question. One more question. Very briefly, Andriy Smarodin. We are actively cooperating with the Ministry of Education of Ukraine, with our research institutions. Two remarks. We are looking at the Eastern Partnership experience, the 3 Cs countries, and certain progress of Ukraine. Well, they are not aware about the progress of Ukraine. So together with the Science Park of Lviv Polytechnical University, we do our best for our R&D to be sold and for us to be able to constructively cooperate with our foreign partners, which is why the law is very relevant. Tomorrow we have the meeting of the initiative of the 3 Cs, and we will actually be delivering the message about all the changes which are happening. And actually, yes, it will really help us with bringing our R&D closer to the EU. This was a small comment on my side. Thank you, Mr. Andriy. Thank you, everyone. If you didn't manage to ask a question, there will still be time after the event. And we have yet another question from the online chat. I'm going to read it aloud. Volodymyr Halanovsky is asking Mr. Kurbatov. Mr. Denis, what do you think about the proposal as follows, and is it feasible, and what needs to be done for this? We don't have time for a gradual development and for preserving we need to initiate 2 key initiatives for development of the parks, the tax holidays for the first 5 years, and for the customs incentives and tax incentives. Well, the proposal is mentioned in all the details here. And second of all, stimulating business and investors who invest into R&D. So, please, this goes to you, Mr. Denis. You know, if that question goes to me, Denis Kurbatov supports tax holidays. But we are here, and well, that's great that we have all these thoughts about interaction at various platforms. We discuss it a lot with our partners from United Kingdom, from USA. As a community, we need to agree that this is a project which will become a game changer for the science, for the applicable science. We need to do our best to properly lobby this one, for it to be passed, for it to be really turned into the law, and for us to start creating the new structures, the science parks, which will add value to the economy and will really change the game. Thank you, Mr. Denis. And this event, Science City Ecosystem, is over. But before actually ending, I would like to remind you that we still have 10 days for the discussion of the proposals. You can send these proposals on your badges. You have QR codes, and one of these would be the platform to which you can send your proposals. If you are online, you can see this barcode in the link. Briefly about doing this. You will click the link. There you can have a look at the 8 draft laws. That amendments to 8 laws, as well as 2 codes, customs and tax code. There are comparative tables.
Рекомендуємо вам
We recommend you to provide proposals in the format of commenting these 2 comparative tables. This is going to be more efficient for them to be taken into account. Okay, so click the link, and we are looking forward to get your proposals. You still have enough time, and everything that was mentioned today will be taken into account. So today, together with you, we've created a unique platform for having a dialogue between the representatives of government, science, business, investment partners, and international organizations. I'm grateful for active participation, for your ideas, for active discussions. Especially thank you to all the partners and to everybody who were taking active part. Thank you so much. And together we are standing at the forefront of the transformation where science and business are getting together. Thank you for your time and participation. Wish you all the successes, new achievements, productive cooperation, and together with you, we can change not just Ukraine, but also the world. Thank you.
та усіх учасників запрошуємо до нетворкінгу.